Hello every pony, it's that super duper special time again, since it's time for yet another cartoon ranking video. After my last ranking on Foster's Home, you guys voted and overwhelmingly wanted me to review Ed, Edd, and Eddy. This was another series I watched all the time as a kid, and thankfully it's still a good show that's worth watching or rewatching today. Unfortunately, it does have issues like some bad episodes as well as the last season being notably weaker, but I'll get to that shortly. Anyway, I don't want to waste any time, so let's quickly go over the rules. First off, I will be ranking every single episode, including all 3 holiday specials and of course the movie, as well as finale big picture show. Second, there are going to be episodes that you like that I don't, and ones that I like that you don't. If you want to discuss your thoughts on an episode or multiple episodes, then comment below. Third, I will be rating each episode on a score of 1 to 10. Fourth, some of the episode listings are messed up and out of order. Wikipedia and IMDb have listings that are different from the DVD box set, which is how I watch the series and what I use to order the episodes. Speaking of the DVD box set, I have my issues with it. This is supposed to include every episode, which I guess is technically true, but it doesn't include the holiday specials and more importantly big picture show. Like what the hickey, the specials are one thing, but how does this not include the movie? That's the series finale, and it's not like the other DVD sets didn't include their movies either. Foster's Home, Dexter's Lab, and even the original Ben 10 back in 2008 included the series movie on the season 4 DVD, so why can't this? I will gladly pay $20 or even more if Cartoon Network released a separate DVD that included Big Picture Show as well as all 3 specials as a bonus. People will buy it, so come on Cartoon Network, what the Sigma are you guys waiting for? Anyway, let's get on with the ranking and start with the absolute worst episode, which is... Look at this photograph!
You blinked.
Oh boy, I was not expecting there to be an offensively atrocious episode on the list. It's been quite a while since I last saw the series, but even so, I don't remember there being that many episodes that people hated. There are some that are widely regarded as bad, and of course I was expecting to dislike some, but still, I wasn't prepared to completely despise one. Smile for the Ed is easily the worst episode of Ed, Edd, and Eddy, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people agree or would at least put it in their bottom 3. First off, I barely remember this at all. I'm sure I've seen it at least once or twice back when it was on TV, but either way, I'm glad I forgot about this. Anyway, this episode takes place at school where it's picture day and Eddy's parents told him that he'll get his brother's old room if his picture is good. So Eddy smiles and tries to look his best, but... Bitch! Yep. Kevin comes out of nowhere and calls Eddy a bitch. Because of this, Eddy's picture turns out like this, which doesn't even make sense. From the looks of it, Eddy's in the middle of turning his whole body, even though he's completely still when the camera takes his picture. The thing is, Eddy does turn around in a super fluent motion before he begins smiling and before the picture is taken. Wouldn't it make more sense to cut from him turning around to then a shot of his picture? This could have been just an accident and it would be sort of funny too. Eddy tried so hard to get a good picture, but failed since he decided to move around so much. All he had to do was sit there and smile. That's it. But no, instead Kevin calls him a bitch, which is pretty annoying since Eddy didn't do anything wrong here. Again, all he wanted was to get his brother's old room, which is perfectly fine. It's one thing if he was going to brag about it to everyone and tell them how much cooler his room is, but no, he just wants the room because it belonged to his brother. Anyway, what did Eddy do after Kevin called him a bitch? Most likely, he would have turned towards him and yelled at him, or he would have been shocked and confused. That also would have been a fine way to ruin Eddy's picture. Instead of it looking like this, it's him making a weird confused face, or it's him being super angry and pissed off. That would have made much more sense, especially the scenario where Eddy is shouting with his mouth open and yelling at Kevin, but we don't get that. The picture isn't even funny either. I know it's funny to the kids, but for me it's not. Like, yeah, it's silly, it's dumb, but I'm not laughing my butthole off when I look at it. Anyway, after Eddy gets his picture taken, Kevin finds it and shows it to everyone else. Not only that, but he photocopies it and puts it up all around the school so literally every single person can see it.
Wow, what an asshole.
They all then start wearing it, including Lee, who sexually harasses him, which is extremely hard to watch. Yeah, if you couldn't already tell, this is just an Eddy torture corn. Everyone shits on him and he's miserable. Why?
Why?
Anyway, Double D attempts to retake Eddy's picture, but out of nowhere and for no reason whatsoever, Kevin comes and shoves his photo in front of the camera. First off, this isn't really a problem for Eddy. It's just sort of annoying and wastes some time. Double D is the one taking Eddy's photo now when he isn't limited to just one photo, so shouldn't he be able to take yet another photo? What, are you telling me that was the only photo left he could have taken? Was the camera out of ink or paper or something and prevented him from taking another one? Second, how did Kevin know Eddy was in here? And most importantly, why is Kevin doing this? What makes Kevin such a fun and understandable character is that he's just a normal kid. He usually isn't a jerk and only beats up the Eds when they annoy him. But again, here Eddy doesn't do anything wrong and doesn't even interact with Kevin until he calls him a bitch. Kevin goes out of his way to bully Eddy as well as the other kids too. It's so mean-spirited, unfunny, and just unbearable to watch. Maybe if Eddy accidentally annoyed or did something to Kevin without him realizing it, then Kevin would have had some kind of reason to do this. Also, Kevin could have done this without knowing how badly Eddy wanted to get a good picture too. Maybe this could have been used as a way for Eddy to get a bad picture, but then the rest of it is about him trying to look good for when Double D retakes it later on. Eddy could try not to get his clothes dirty or mess up his face or something. He tries to stay clean and look nice, but has bad luck and deals with a bunch of random nonsense throughout the day. Does that sound like a great episode? Not really, but it sure as hell is leagues better than this, which is... What makes this even worse, as well as easily the worst episode, is that this is a rehash of another episode, You're Ed Here, which I'll get into right after this actually. But before I do, is there anything I liked about this shit stain? Eddy goes to show his mom Ed's crayon drawing of him and thinks she'll believe that it's his actual school photo, which was sort of funny. But this is at the end of the episode, and by the time I got to this point, I was just begging for it to be over. Smile for the Ed is offensively terrible. It does nothing right, it's just an Eddy torture corn. It's unfunny, stupid, and I wish I could run over it with a steamroller.
My name is... Am I an artist or what?
Like I just said, one of the many reasons why Smile for the Ed is atrocious is because it rips off another episode, which is You're Ed Here. This is another one that I don't remember all that much, but I do know that I've seen it before.
Joyce, a wallet! Any cash? It's empty, like your head.
Kevin picks up Eddy's wallet and finds out that his middle name is Skipper, which is somehow embarrassing. Guess it is sort of a dumb sounding name, but I really don't find it funny or even relatable. Forget if I've mentioned this before on my channel, but I don't have a middle name, which is apparently pretty uncommon. If I ever do decide to give myself a middle name, it'd be Jeff, because my name's Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
Anyway, Eddy doesn't want Kevin telling everyone his middle name, so he decides to do whatever Kevin wants. This is very similar to the last episode in terms of concept, although there are some minor differences. This time it's mainly about Eddy sucking up to Kevin instead of everyone in the school outright bullying him. Although it does turn into that at the end, because for some reason Kevin tells everyone his name. Why?
Why?
I don't know, because he's an asshole?
Wow, what an asshole.
This is another episode where Kevin doesn't have a reason for being a jerk to Eddy. The episode starts with the Eds showing off their new scam, which takes a person and makes a wax dummy out of them. It's a really cool idea, and everyone except for Kevin seems to enjoy it. The only problem is that Jimmy ends up getting hurt, but then a minute later he seems to be fine. Besides that, there really isn't anything wrong with it, so could it really be called a scam? Maybe the wax figures melt or break super easily, but either way we don't see that happen. The reason this is such a problem is because the Eds, or mainly Eddy, didn't deserve to be treated like this. If Eddy scammed everyone or was a jerk, then his treatment would be sort of justified, but again, it's not. The worst thing he does is ask if there's money in his wallet when Kevin finds it, which is pretty greedy. But that's literally it. That's the worst and actually only thing Eddy does wrong up to this point. I say up to this point because the episode ends with Double D revealing his middle name, which is...
My middle name is Marion.
Eddy then tells everyone else and they all make fun of him, which again is completely uncalled for. Double D is trying to help out Eddy, but instead he gets shit on for no reason at all. The thing that's so frustrating about this is that there's such a simple and better way to end the episode. Have Double D tell Eddy that Kevin makes fun of him since his middle name is embarrassing too. They somehow find out or just ask him outright, everyone else finds out and starts making fun of him. That'd be sort of mean, but Kevin definitely deserved it for being an asshole. They also could have had it end with everyone else revealing their middle names, which are all embarrassing too. They then all laugh at each other and that's how the episode ends. Wouldn't make the episode good by any means since it wouldn't make up for how mean-spirited and unbearable it is at times, but at the very least it would have turned it from a horrendous one to a worst one that's just bad. Anyway, not much else to say. Kevin is god-awful here, it's another Eddy torture corn, and the ending is super mean-spirited too.
Uh-oh. Stinky.
Don't lie, Eddy! It wasn't my fault!
Weekend wrecker!
Double D's shower is gone, so now he has to go around the cul-de-sac to find someone else's shower to use. First off, I could complain and say how dumb and unrealistic it is for Double D's parents to get rid of their entire bathroom without Double D knowing. But being realistic isn't what the show is known for, and honestly, I'm more annoyed that this is basically a rehash of one of the best jokes in the show.
What happened to the stairs? My parents took them down because I am grounded.
Anyway, we've seen 2 Eddy torture corns, but now this one is a Double D torture corn. All he wants to do is find someone's shower to use, but of course isn't able to because otherwise there wouldn't be an episode. What annoys me the most is why Eddy doesn't let Double D use a shower. He doesn't give any reason at all. He just says hit the road and kicks him out. If you're not going to let Double D use your shower, then at least have some kind of reason. Eddy is a jerk, I get that, but again, the only reason he doesn't let him is because he's a jerk. The thing is, I'm not entirely opposed to this since Eddy could have at least said he could use a shower if he gave him a quarter. That would have been in character for him, it would have been sort of funny, and it would have provided a reason for Double D being unable to use it since he doesn't have money. Anyway, after Double D leaves, he goes to Jimmy's and then Rolf's place can't use their shower, so then goes insane and covers himself in shit. Might be a hot take, but I sort of enjoy seeing Double D act crazy like this. Double D is usually the smart one and voice of reason, but even he can be broken on rare occasions. Anyway, the episode ends with Double D being miserable since Ed is the one who decides to clean him, which is pretty annoying. Like really? You couldn't give Double D a happy ending? You had to keep him miserable even at the very end? Just let him use Naz's shower or hell, even Johnny's, I don't know. But don't end the episode with him suffering for no reason whatsoever. Pretty stupid concept, it's a Double D torture corn and sort of a bad rehash of Knock Knock Who's Ed. So the last 3 episodes are ones that are widely hated or at least disliked by fans, but this one might be sort of a hot take. This does have a low score on IMDb, but even so, I've heard no one talk about this one. Look Before You Ed has Double D and Jimmy start a safety club at school, which is just as fun and interesting as it sounds. They try to make everyone's lives safer, but oh no, they just end up annoying them because they think everything is dangerous. Then it ends with the Eds being locked up because Jimmy realizes that they're the ones who cause trouble for everyone else. This might just be the most boring episode in the series. There's other ones that I didn't care for, but from nearly beginning to end, I barely felt anything. Can't even say I was tired of the show by this point either. Like yeah, season 5 was easily the weakest season, but it ended with the fistful of Ed and the Eds are coming, both of which are super high on the list. The only thing this episode has going for it is that it's sort of different to see Jimmy and Double D work together as well as this.
That's winter without a snow job, huh, socket? Get it? Snow job?
Okay, seriously, how the fuck did they get away with that?
Attention all! Fairy tale things.
Jimmy thinks fairy tales are real, so Eddy scams him, Jimmy gets depressed, but then scams Eddy. Just like the last one, this is pretty boring and uninteresting. Didn't care for the whole fairy tale concept, and just like the other bad episodes, they just aren't that funny either. Guess Eddy dressing up as a fairy and Double D as a mermaid is funny to the characters, but not for me. Now originally I had this listed slightly higher, but I still really disliked it, although I couldn't think of why.
Why?
However, I eventually realized that this is basically a rehash as well as a bad version of Here's Mud in Your Ed. That episode had Eddy scam Jimmy, which made him depressed, but then Rolf teams up with him and helps him scam Eddy. Yeah, that's a very similar concept, although there are differences. First off, Double D didn't know Ed and Eddy scam Jimmy, whereas here he just goes along with it even though he knows it's wrong. In that episode, we know right away that Rolf and Jimmy are going to scam Eddy, whereas here it's not revealed until after they scam him. There's differences, but still not enough where I say it merits the episode existing. Also, there's this plotline of Rolf boring a load of baloney, which just feels like filler since it has nothing to do with the main plot. Guess the writers needed to fill in another minute's worth of the episode, but were too lazy to tweak the main plot, so they just added this in.
Rolf has taken care of his load of baloney for good!
Rolf makes Ed watch his animals while he goes to visit his family, so Ed brings them into his house, they make a mess, Rolf comes back to pick them up, and that's it. Like a lot of other bad episodes, this one's pretty forgettable, boring, and unfunny. The slapstick especially gets old, and that's what a lot of the jokes stem from here. Ed is also at one of his worst too. During season 5 and even 4, he started getting more dumb, loud, and sort of annoying at times. He never got as bad as Cosmo, or even the mayor from the Powerpuff Girls, but still, I definitely started to like him less as the show went on. Anyway, this sort of feels like a different take on Fleabit and Ed, where the Eds take Rolf's animals and clean them. That plotline only lasted a few minutes, whereas this one was for most of the episode. This is different enough, and I wouldn't go as far as to call it a rehash, but still, it reminds me of that, and I'd much rather watch that over this.
You're good, but I'm better.
Ed gets a music box from his pen pal and it gives Rolf PTSD since he hated wolves as a kid. The flashback is fine and the idea of seeing Rolf back before he moved to the cul-de-sac is interesting. However, the rest of it is just Rolf being mad at Ed even though he didn't do anything wrong. There's really not much to say. Rolf's just kind of an ass here and the ending is super dumb too. Apparently Double D's pen pal knows Rolf and sent Ed the music box since he knew Rolf would be pissed off. Instead of being mad at the pen pal, he just laughs it off and stuffs the Eds in a suitcase. So, okay.
Oh dear, what is it? I've spontaneously combusted. Oh, I am sorry. Oh, it's quite all right. I've grown tired of living.
Sarah, Jimmy, and eventually everyone else pretend to be rich, and this bothers Eddy because, he's not rich, I guess. The main problem is that it's just not that interesting of a concept, and it's not entertaining either. Like, I guess it is sort of a fun idea to see how these kids envision what it's like to be rich. They're most likely middle or lower class kids that also stay in their neighborhood and don't seem to travel that much, if at all. Again, not horrendous or even that bad. There's nothing inherently wrong with it in terms of writing, it's just super forgettable.
Let's go.
Sarah and Jimmy ask everyone where babies come from, and yeah, that's just as exciting as it sounds. The Eds don't even show up until halfway through, which is a big reason why I didn't care that much. Don't get me wrong, I like the other kids, but when the two main characters are Jimmy and Sarah, that's sort of a problem. They aren't strong enough to carry scenes by themselves, and especially without the Eds. Once the Eds do show up, it gets better, but still, it's nothing worth watching except for when Ed flies and carries Eddy like a baby. That was epic. Alright, I'm sure a lot of you watching this are wondering why this isn't in the bottom 3, bottom 5, or why it's even scored higher than a 3 out of 10. Well, sorry to disappoint some of you, but despite this being one of the most hated episodes, I don't despise it like many others do. Now, right away, I'll admit that this is a bad and flawed episode. It starts with everyone making a giant friendship heart, and of course, they do the unspeakable. They start singing.
When you stub your toe and it hurts, you know, friends are there to help you.
My ears.
After this, the Eds come and Eddy gives Jimmy a wedgie, which results in everyone laughing at him. Eddy is a jerk, but even so, he had no reason for doing this. Jimmy literally did nothing to him. Also, why does everyone except for Sarah laugh at Jimmy? Ed, Kevin, Johnny, and Rolf I could sort of understand, but Double D and Naz do too? This seems pretty out of character for them, especially Double D. This is one of, if not the biggest complaint I've heard about the episode, which is how mean-spirited it is. Now yes, this episode is mean-spirited, and at times definitely does go too far, such as this scene. But the thing is, the show is more mean-spirited than other series, even back during its earlier seasons. Full on the Ed and It's Way Ed are both season 1 episodes, and the Eds don't really do anything wrong in them, yet the kids are still sort of jerks to them. Now, most of the time the Eds, especially Eddy, are in the wrong, and them getting shit on is justified, but again, there are exceptions. Either way though, complaining this much about this episode being too cruel is sort of confusing. Smile for the Ed and Your Ed here are much worse than this, since a majority of those center around Eddy suffering for no good reason. In this one though, the Eds being shit on isn't that big of a problem since, well, they did sort of deserve it. Eddy was the one who started this whole thing. He gave Jimmy a wedgie for no reason. Also again, both Ed and Double D laughed at Jimmy, so they're assholes for doing that. Now, the other kids except for Sarah did too, but I guess Jimmy likes them, which is why he didn't mess with them. Another reason why this isn't a huge deal is because the Eds don't suffer for most of the episode. Even though they do get shit on during it, I wouldn't go as far as to call it an Ed's torture corn. There are aspects as well as moments that I do enjoy.
Moo, moo! Moo, moo, moo! Quack!
The montage of the Eds trying to find out who the culprit is pretty entertaining. As bad sounding as the song is, it's still iconic, and it's even used during the end credits of Big Picture Show 2. The Eds being falsely framed and trying to solve a mystery is a great concept, although obviously it wasn't executed very well. Plus, there are other mystery episodes or ones with mystery elements that are much better than this. But either way, I don't think the mystery aspect fails like some people say it does. Jimmy being the culprit does make sense and is predictable, but I don't think it's that obvious either. Jimmy has always been this weak crybaby that also manages to get hurt all the time. He's never gone out of his way to get revenge on someone or do something mean-spirited, which is why this reveal does sort of work. It also continues to develop him from Ed and a Half Shell, which is when he learned how to scam people from Eddy. Jimmy changed after that episode, but by this point that was the only time we saw Jimmy act like that, which again is why this reveal does work. Now, could the culprit have been someone else that wasn't as obvious? Kevin could have done it since he is a dick for no reason at times, but Sarah doing it as a way to get revenge for Jimmy would have made the most sense. She's even the first one who who says that Ed took the paintbrush, even though she had no proof or reason to suspect him. That would have made this line actually make sense, and also would have made Sarah a more likable character. She always beats the shit out of the Eds, but for once she decides to scam or frame them instead. Also, going back to the beginning again, Jimmy framing the Eds is super unrealistic. I know I said earlier that being realistic isn't an issue for the series, but here it's just way too unbelievable. You're telling me that within what, like 10 seconds or so, Jimmy thought of this grand master plan and did it without anyone else noticing? It would have been pretty funny if just one of them turned around, saw Jimmy doing this, which resulted in his plan failing. Anyway, despite this being hated by almost everyone, this is somehow one of Danny Antonucci's favorites. Now I can see people enjoying this. Hell, I liked it as a kid, but to say it's one of your favorites? That's just crazy. The only other thing I'll mention is that while this is poorly written and more mean-spirited than others, I'd still rather watch it over most of the 4 and even 5 out of 10 episodes. This is fairly entertaining, and while I have to admit that it's heavily flawed, I still don't consider it to be one of the absolute worst cartoon episodes ever made.
How can I study this planet if the entire population is staring at my freakishly deformed head?
Eddie grows as it and is paranoid about it since he's afraid the other kids will make fun of him, which they do. This is going to be controversial. Some people like this and some don't, and obviously I'm one of them. This is sort of an Eddie torture corn, although clearly not as awful as the first 2. That's because Eddie is worried about thinking what the other kids would say if they saw it. He's miserable and afraid because of his own imagination, which is different from everyone outright bullying him. Now the kids do find out and see him, and yeah, they do laugh at him, but this is just one scene along with another one which is like 20 seconds. This isn't Eddie being made fun of by everyone for the entire episode, which is why it's not one of the absolute worst. This is also much more relatable than something like having a dumb middle name or a bad school photo. Anyway, there are things to enjoy here. There's some funny moments, and we also get this scene where Double D yells at everyone for laughing at Eddie. I also like how Rolf ends up helping Eddie, even though it doesn't work, but at least it's funny.
What happened to my head?
This is a kid show, which is why I know they couldn't do this, but if I were Eddie, I'd just pop the zit or cut it off with scissors. There'd be a lot of blood and pus and shit, which is why they most likely didn't go this route, but then again, SpongeBob did in the Splinter episode.
Hurry, Ed! You almost got me!
Ed and Eddie go around the cul-de-sac and annoy everyone, and for some reason it's Double D's responsibility to make them stop. He's their friend and all, I get that, but that doesn't mean he's their parents. If everyone is so mad at them, then why don't they tell their parents? Or better yet, why don't they beat the crap out of them like they've done plenty of times beforehand? Kevin, Rolf, and Sarah are strong enough too, but even then, the idea of them not being able to stop the Eds isn't a bad idea. Maybe instead of forcing Double D to solve the problem, they go to the Cancer Sisters and get them to chase the Eds around the cul-de-sac.
Oh, Ed! Wanna try some broccoli?
Anyway, Eddie acts a bit too much like Ed here. He's much more hyper and crazy than usual, although I do like seeing him get along with Ed. Even though what they're doing is wrong, at least they're both having fun together. They can be assholes and have fun doing something that's morally wrong. Hell, you'll find out later that I love A Case of Ed. That episode is hilarious, and this episode has its share of really funny moments too. But again, even though it can be pretty entertaining at times, some of the writing is just so bad it holds it back. The episode even ends with Kevin about to beat up Double D. Like really? You couldn't end it with Double D chasing the two of them? You had to have him get shit on even at the very end? Johnny invites everyone to his house for Plank's Arbor Day party. However, only the Eds show up, which disappoints Eddie. Not sure if this is a hot take or not, since this is rated as one of the worst episodes on IMDb, but either way, it's pretty mediocre. Eddie is fine here. He's a dick at times, but he has a decent reason for acting like this. This is one of the rare times he's been invited to someone else's party. However, no one else shows up. Instead, he's left with just Ed, Double D, and Johnny, along with a bunch of party games that are super lame. He does try to leave, but ultimately decides not to, even though he probably should have, since he hates being here. The concept is fine, but in execution it's just whatever. Not bad, not offensive, just sort of forgettable. Oh boy, this is another one that a decent amount of people seem to hate, which I can see why, but I do think it is overhated. So Rolf is burying a phone which he says is cursed, but Eddie decides to take it despite Rolf's warning. He then answers the phone and oh wow, would you look at that, it is cursed after all. However, Double D doesn't seem to think so, since he's a smart one and believes that everything is just a reasonable coincidence. First off, everyone who hates this episode says that it's just another Eddie torture corn, which yes, Eddie does suffer a lot, but here there is a reason for it. it. Eddy purposely ignored Rolf's word on how the phone brings doom to anyone who takes ownership of it. He was stupid enough to ignore him, even though Rolf is sort of crazy, but that's besides the point. The lesson is to trust others, even if what they say doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Also, not only is Eddy stupid and wrong for taking the phone, but he's too stubborn to just bury it, throw it away, or break it. What, you're telling me the phone is indestructible or something? There's no way this phone is stronger than this huge ass TV I broke while wearing a fucking maid outfit. Anyway, if Eddy realized that the phone was cursed, then why doesn't he do any of those things I mentioned? He does give it away to Johnny at the end, but Johnny didn't take it at will. Ed just glued it to his head and left. That's why the ending doesn't bother me that much, although it's still sort of dumb to end the episode with Eddy suffering like this. Even though he was dumb and stubborn, I think he got beat up enough throughout the episode. Anyway, there is one aspect that I do agree sort of sucks, which is Double D. Instead of caring that Eddy gets his cheeks clapped, he cares more about proving that all of Eddy's misfortunes are just coincidences. Now I get what they were going for here. Double D is a logical and smart one. He doesn't believe in bad luck and curses and thinks everything happens for a reason. That makes sense and is in character, but to care more about this and Eddy's well-being is pretty stupid. He's even glad that Eddy is in pain at the end since the phone is gone, meaning that Eddy was wrong despite finding out that he really wasn't. Double D is a prick here, although I wouldn't call him unbearable or anything like that. Honestly, if Double D was written better, this might have been an overall decent episode, but as is, it's not good, but still gets way too much hate.
You pay this woman to sit on babies?
Eddy's parents are out for the night, so they let Naz babysit him, and he thinks she's at his house to go on a date. This one is easily considered one of the weakest episodes from the first few seasons, and it's easy to see why. Naz babysitting Eddy is just a dumb concept in general and doesn't even make sense either. Eddy is like, what, 12 years old, and why would his parents trust someone the same age as their kid to babysit them? If this was Eddy babysitting Jimmy or something like Kevin babysitting Sarah, then that'd be more believable. But either way, the concept is stupid, and unfortunately the rest of it isn't that special. Eddy being nervous about Naz and thinking she's here on a date sounds like it would make for some good jokes. But in execution, the comedy is just sort of there. It's not painfully unfunny, but it's not a particularly funny episode either. For some reason, Johnny, Rolf, and Kevin show up because, why not? They really didn't need to be here, and removing them wouldn't make much of a difference. They needed to put more emphasis on Eddy and Naz being alone. They could have done so much more with them together. They should have gone all out with the cringe humor and have Eddy act awkward around her, but for some reason they don't. Overall, it's a dumb idea that might have worked if it was written better.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
A toast to my Big Mow! Big Mow! Big Mow!
Ed is forced to babysit Sarah, so Eddy and Double D come to help him out. This is another episode that's widely regarded to be one of the weakest from the first few seasons. The main problem is Sarah, who's the worst character in the show. People might hate Jimmy, the Cancer Sisters, or even Eddy, but for me, Sarah is by far the worst. She gets away with everything and almost never gets shit on. Well, except for in Big Picture Show, but I won't be talking about that for quite a while. Anyway, the reason Sarah doesn't suck as much in most episodes is because she isn't the main focus. However, here she is, meaning we get to see her a lot. Why does she have to be such an asshole to everyone, especially Ed? He's her brother and he does pretty much anything for her. If I was Ed, I'd tell her to go fuck herself and then have Plank take a dump on her bed.
Whose car is this, you twerp?
Yellow tape around his...
The ending is underwhelming too. It ends with Ed's house being a mess, so they all draw a picture saying that Ed's mom won't notice a difference. So, okay.
Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, cool.
Anyway, there's some fun moments, but Sarah is way too unlikable for me to rank it any higher. She's obnoxious, she's a scumbag, and someone really needs to teach her a lesson. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do what should have been done 26 years ago.
book of Sega Genesis.
Unbeknownst to thee, there is an important piece of our heritage living among us.
The Eds find an old book that reveals Peach Creek was founded by Eddy's ancestors, so because of this, Eddy thinks that everyone owes him money, which is pretty dumb. Although it doesn't matter, because at the end, we find out that it's actually the Cancer Sisters who own Peach Creek now. This is some really cool world building, especially with how little we get in the series. However, besides that, there's really not a whole lot to appreciate or even say here. It's one of those episodes where the premise is great, but in execution, it's just whatever.
See you at the next thing we can't come to, Kevin!
Mom!
Ed has a nightmare where Johnny is his mom, and when he wakes up, he's still afraid of Johnny. This might be a hot take, but I didn't care for this all that much, which I hate to say because I do remember enjoying this as a kid. The concept sounds funny, but I guess a whole episode based on one joke is extremely hard to pull off right. The opening nightmare scene is a lot of fun, and it's funny seeing Johnny be Ed's mom the first time around. But after that, it's just the same joke over and over again. Like I said, this might be a hot take, so if it is, then let me know in the comment section.
I call this one the Campfire Song.
The Urban Rangers go camping in the woods and the Eds decide to spook them. This is another one that's most likely a hot take, but as for me, I didn't care for it all that much. Not sure if Johnny, Jimmy, and Rolf aren't strong enough to work without the Eds, if the concept isn't that great, or if the jokes aren't that funny either, but something about this one doesn't do it for me, although again, I can definitely see others enjoying this. Anyway, that's all the episodes that I've scored lower than a 6 out of 10, meaning everything beyond this point are episodes that I'd say are worth watching at least once. Sarah wants Ed to do a shit ton of chores, but Eddy suggests that he moves out instead, so he starts living at Rolf's place. Despite being in this episode for about a minute, I wanted to push Sarah off the Empire State Building. I know I've already said this, but why does she have to be such an annoying bitch? All Ed did was leave a sock in her room. Does that merit him doing a bunch of dumb chores for the whole day? No. Anyway, I feel really bad for Rolf. He was nice enough to let Ed stay here, even though Eddy and Double D stay too for some reason. He does get back at them at the end at least, which sort of makes up for him being miserable for half the episode.
Ed, how can you be so stupid?
I watch cartoons, Eddie.
Sarah is sick and Jimmy and Ed fight over who the better caretaker is. Like every episode she's in, Sarah is a piece of shit, but at least it's refreshing to see her be sick and in a weak state. I know Ed is a good brother and all, but he should have just let Jimmy take care of her. He is younger and the same age as her, but I don't think he would have done anything wrong that would have prevented her from getting better. Either way, if I were Ed, I would have told Sarah to fuck off for being an asshole.
Shovelhead.
There's a school dance, everyone attends it, and somehow it ends with the school getting destroyed. Some fans don't like Season 5 since it introduced the school as a new setting, which I actually think is a good idea. However, one complaint with this is that it's way too surreal seeing just the same 12 characters in one entire school. Normally this isn't an issue, although this is one of the rare times where I actually have a problem with it. This is a school dance, yet there's no one else here. Like, I get it, no other kids or adults can be seen on the show, but even so, this makes the episode so weird to watch. Shouldn't there be like 100 other kids here, or did literally every single one of them not give a shit and stayed home? Also, why are Sarah and Jimmy here? Everyone besides them are in 6th grade, aren't they? Sarah and Jimmy should be like, what, in 2nd or 3rd grade? Maybe this is a Catholic school that goes from kindergarten to 8th grade? Who knows? Anyway, ignoring all that, there really isn't a whole lot to say. The cast are at a school dance, they dance, and they dance till they're dead.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Ed smells, so Double D and Eddy clean him, and then they teach him how to be cool, which makes all the kids like him. My main problem is how disconnected both plot lines are. The first half is about Ed smelling, and then the second is about him being cool. They feel like two separate episodes stitched together. Anyway, one thing this episode shows is that if Ed wanted to, he might be able to hang out with the other kids if he stopped being friends with Eddy. He'd be more like Johnny and Rolf, where he's weird, but still likable enough where everyone still wants to be friends with him. Then again, in the previous episode, he freaked out Jimmy, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, the ending is pretty dumb. The Cancer Sisters come out of nowhere and ruin everything. Normally, I don't mind if an episode ends with them kissing the Eds, but this is easily one of, if not their worst appearances. Like I just said, they show up, ruin everything, and steal Eddie's cash. What, could the writers not think of a way to end the episode without them? All they had to do was make Ed mess up and start acting weird. Seems like an easy and simple way to end the episode. Also, this isn't against the episode itself, but on the DVD, this is listed as the second episode, or more specifically, the second half of the first episode. When I watched it on the DVD, I was so confused because this was the first episode that introduced the Cancer Sisters. I thought to myself, there's no way this is how they were introduced, right? So I looked it up, and of course, for some unknown reason, this episode and the actual first episode are switched. Why?
Why?
I don't know, but either way, it's pretty inconvenient, annoying, as well as confusing to anyone who's never seen the series before. The Eds find a key and try to find out what it unlocks. Pretty sure this is also considered one of the weaker episodes from the earlier seasons, which it is, but it's still okay.
Okay.
There's a lot of simple episodes in the series, with them all differing in terms of quality. It all depends on how interesting as well as funny they are, which I know is pretty straightforward, but then again, that's just how the show is. Finding out what the key unlocks is a decent mystery, and the jokes are alright too. The ending has the Cancer Sisters come and, play footsies with the Eds.
What the fuck?
Not the worst way to end it, but at least the reveal of the key unlocking Ed's house was funny, so yeah.
You want to deliver something? Deliver us from the torment of this horrible game!
The Eds deliver newspapers to everyone in the cul-de-sac. This is one of the series' most simple episodes. There really isn't a whole lot to say here. The other kids are barely in it, so it focuses mainly on the Eds, which is a nice change. Also, where the hell are they getting all these papers from, and wouldn't it make sense to deliver them to houses besides the cul-de-sac? Aren't there like, what, 10 houses here? How do you expect to deliver hundreds of papers to just these 10 houses? Anyway, once it starts raining, the ink washes away, which I don't think that's how that works, but who knows? Maybe I'm on the spectrum.
Iridocyclitis.
Oh, sorry, dude. You ran out of time.
What are you, deaf?
Ed beats Double D at the school spelling bee, and now everyone thinks he's super duper smart, which is sort of super duper dumb. Think people don't like this one, which I can see why, but I think it's alright. Yes, the plot is sort of forced as well as dumb, but it's not poorly done. Ed being able to spell ectoplasm makes sense since he reads a lot of comics, and this also makes Double D nervous since he didn't expect Ed to spell a word right. He also accidentally pronounces I instead of Y in gravy, which is easy to do, especially since again, he was nervous. The main problem comes from the second half, where all the kids start treating Ed like he's a genius and Double D like he's a moron. This is dumb, I'll admit that, but it's not that big of a deal. You have to remember that these are all still kids, and most of them aren't that bright either since they've fallen and continue to fall for Eddie's scams. Plus, shitting on Double D but admiring Ed since he just won the spelling bee isn't that unbelievable. However, Sarah, his own sister, falling for this is way too unrealistic. Johnny, Jimmy, and Rolf are perfectly fine, but not Sarah. That's just dumb.
Madden.
Kevin, Double D, Eddie, Rolf, and Johnny play for the school's football team. Meanwhile, Ed is the team's mascot. This is another one that's super surreal to watch since these 12 characters are the only ones on screen. You're telling me that no one else in the school is on the football team, but somehow the Eds are?
Yes.
Also, I don't know the rules of football, but I'm pretty sure there's not just 4 or 5 players on one team. They couldn't have Sarah and Jimmy play since they're younger, and Ass is one of the cheerleaders too. But couldn't they force the Cancer Sisters to be on the same team too? Actually, now that I think about it, that sounds like a much better idea. Not only is Kevin working with the Eds, but so are the Cancer Sisters too. Maybe whoever wins the game also gets a bunch of Jawbreakers, which forces everyone to actually try and win too. Anyway, there are silhouettes and cutouts of other people during a few shots, but even so, this is still very surreal and weird.
Sometimes I dream about cheese.
1, 2, 3, 4. How many?
Ed has a stinky cheese in his pocket, which prevents Double D from working on Eddie's scam. This is basically if they took the first half of Over Your Ed and made it into a full episode. Sure, it's very simple and it works, and I like how the conflict is between just the Eds and none of the other kids. Shows that even though they're friends, they still argue about dumb stuff like this from time to time.
Hey guys, what's up?
Fly, Nash, fly!
She didn't even make a grab for it!
The Eds chase after a balloon. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Another super simple episode that's decently entertaining. I like how the only reason Eddie wants a balloon is so he can pop it. Kevin being the one who released it was also a funny reveal too. But yeah, if Eddie wanted to pop it, then he should have grabbed a shotgun and popped that fucker wide open. Boom!
You're tall.
What are those supposed to be? Just the latest footwear? Check him out!
Eddy is annoyed that he's short and wants to be taller. It's sort of interesting to find out that Eddy cares so much about his height, although that's not something I can relate to. I'm like 5'11", so I never knew what it was like to be short, except when I was a kid, but now I'm not short, so yeah. The episode ends with the Cancer Sisters messing everything up, but unlike Over Your Ed, they show up before the last 2 minutes, so at least they were established earlier on and didn't literally come out of nowhere. That being said, they still didn't need to be here. Eddy could have messed up the shoes on his own and broke it.
What goes up stays up.
Until I take it up.
Eddy wants to go up and do anything that has to do with up.
We best be going. I gotta go work on some crossword puzzles. You're gonna suck my dick.
This is one of the most bizarre concepts. It's so weird and I don't even know how to describe it. Guess it's just really stupid, but it's so stupid that at least it's fairly entertaining. Most of the other kids have fun with the Eds, which is nice, although Kevin had to come and ruin it since it led to Eddy revealing that he wasn't going to pay anyone. The ending has to be the best part though.
I wanna go down!
The Eds host what I think is a talent show and choose Jimmy to be their star. Without a doubt, the best part has to be when Eddy picks Jimmy, but only him and not Sarah. She starts bitching about not being picked, but then Eddy yells straight in her face. Like, holy shit, you don't know how happy that made me. I almost got off my couch and started clapping. Anyway, I feel like the whole episode should have just been a regular talent show. Would have been cool to see everyone show off their talents to each other, including the Eds. Maybe whoever wins gets Jawbreakers or cash. I don't know, but I think it would have made for a better episode.
Hey, for AJ. Her cat makes me sneeze and she never butters my toes. The cards now!
All the kids got their report cards and Ed and Eddy did awful on theirs. They plan on changing their grades, but Double D decides to bring the cards to the parents anyway. This is another episode that's not too well received by fans, and I sort of see why. Double D choosing to go against Ed and Eddy's wishes is controversial, but I don't think it's that unbelievable and out of character. Most of the time, Double D is morally in the right, and here he sort of is. Obviously, he can't just let Ed and Eddy forge their report cards and give them to their parents. That wouldn't be a good lesson for kids, but at the same time, he's sort of betraying them too since he is their friend. Do I think he's in the right for doing this? I don't know. It's hard to say. Eddy definitely deserved to get caught, but Ed, I don't know. He's on the spectrum for sure, so he might deserve a break here. But at the very least, I can't believe that this is something that Double D would do. That's why I don't have a problem with this episode, especially since that's really the only problem people seem to have with it. Anyway, did Eddy really think rigging his report card, or actually report cards, were going to work? Yeah, for some reason on both cards it says Eddy, even though one is supposed to be Ed's. They fixed this a few shots later, but it's so surprising that this was in the final cut. Also, there's a comment section on the bottom of the card, so what was Eddy planning on doing for that? I'm sure it says something like, your son fucking sucks, beat the shit out of him and force him to play Silver Surfer on NES or something like that. Was Eddy going to write something entirely new over it, or was he too dumb to even notice it? Actually, now that I think about it, that would have been a pretty funny way to end the episode. Maybe Double D decides to let Ed and Eddy give their parents the forged report card since he thinks betraying his friends is wrong. But then their parents read the comment section, which was unchanged, the letters Eddy glued on start falling off and they get caught. That would have been funny, but as for what we got, it's not half bad. Anyway, why is this the first episode of the season? Shouldn't it be out with the old, in with the Ed? That's the episode where summer ends and everyone goes back to school. Just like the first two episodes of the first season, I thought the episodes were out of order again, but no, they weren't. That episode aired 2 weeks after this one, so I'm sure fans were pretty confused when this first came out.
Alright guys, welcome to Sex on a Plane prank.
The Eds prank each other, but then everyone in the cul-de-sac gets pranked by the prank master, even though it was just them faking being pranked. The idea is good, but the Eds didn't really deserve to be pranked. The kids didn't have any reason for doing this to them. They just sort of did this because they felt like it. They had no idea the Eds were pranking each other before too, so this is just one big coincidence. Maybe if the Eds started pranking everyone at first, then this would make more sense, but I'm sort of glad they didn't do that, because then it'd be even more similar to 28 pranks later. Fuck that episode, man. I hate it so much. Just thinking about it makes me want to shove my soundbar up my ass. Jimmy gets hurt and everyone feels bad for him, so Eddy becomes jealous and pretends to be hurt, hoping to get their attention. Eddy has done some awful things before, but this is up there as one of his worst. Pretending to be in pain just to get attention is terrible, but it is funny seeing him purposely get hurt during the second half. It even ends with Kevin and Rolf beating the shit out of him, so not only did he get hurt, but he also got their attention too.
He drove in on his golden lawnmower and in one lap cut that grass right down to size.
But we're constrained by the intimacy of our situation.
And you kiss your mother with that mouth?
The Eds mow Double D's lawn and they mow everyone else's lawn since they made them grow with fertilizer, seeds, weed, shit, or whatever the hell it was. Rolf lets them use Victor to vor all the grass, which turns him super chunky. Ed also thinks Victor vored Sarah, which I wish he did, cause that means she'd, you know.
Here I come! Everything is okay! I see you now!
Welcome to our club! Welcome to our club! Please stop! Trees have feelings! What are you doing?
Building a clubhouse.
The Eds make a clubhouse, show everyone it, but then the Cancer Sisters take it over because of course they do. Building the clubhouse was pretty fun, but the last few minutes aren't all that great. Turns out Eddy only built it so people could pay to go in, which is greedy and dumb. Eddy wants to befriend the kids, but he's too greedy and stupid to realize that this isn't how you make friends. If he invited them over without asking for money, they might have ended up having a decent time together. The Cancer Sisters being shoehorned in at the end is also sort of frustrating. Like I said before, unlike some fans, I really like the Cancer Sisters, but why do they have to be forced in during some of these episodes? This is another instance where they could be removed and the ending could be easily rewritten. Have everyone go into the clubhouse, but then it falls apart because the house couldn't handle all 9 kids. It was only meant to hold like 4 or 5 kids at most, and Double D didn't expect there to be so many people in there at once. That'd be a funny as well as clever way to end it. They just fall through the floor and... Kevin and the Eds try breaking some world records. For the first half of the episode at least. After that, the Eds scam everyone, fail, and that's how it ends. The big problem is how disconnected both parts are. The only thing that connects them is that the scam is of everyone traveling around the world going to various places. So what? Them seeing the world and breaking world records is the best they could come up with? If that's the case, then how about this? Anyway, the world record idea is interesting and sounds like a good premise. Sucks to see them ditch this plotline halfway through though, since I wanted to see them attempt to break a bunch of records. It would sort of be like in Very Scary, where Mac and Blue attempt to break a world record and they end up making the world's largest rubber band ball. Anyway, still fun, although definitely had potential to be much better.
It's hot in Topeka.
The Eds go to Naz's party and dick around. Yeah, that's about it. This is the second, or I guess third 11-minute episode, but this is the first on the DVD set. The thing is, this works pretty well as the first episode, although like I said before, the next episode, Over Your Ed, clearly doesn't. This does a good job at introducing the Eds and shows why they aren't able to get along with the other kids. They're all too weird and kind of annoying, even though they really aren't bad people. This definitely could have been better if it focused more on that aspect, especially since the first 2 minutes are sort of just filler. But still, for one of the first episodes, it's pretty decent.
Relax. Have fun. It's a party.
What you say? Get it off, Eddy! Get it! Bingo! This guy's quick! I got it!
Eddy swallows a fly and now he can't speak, so Double D, Ed, and Rolf try to help him out. Didn't realize this until now, but this sort of reminds me of that one Powerpuff Girls episode where Bubbles couldn't speak since she got stung in the throat by a bee? Anyway, it's interesting to see Eddy, who's usually this very loud character, be unable to speak for a whole episode. This is sort of an Eddy torture corn since Eddy is miserable for most of it. But the thing is, Double D, Ed, and Rolf all had good intentions and all the jokes are funny too, which is why this works. Also, if Eddy wanted to, couldn't he just go to his house and get a pencil and paper? He asked for some later on, but again, why couldn't he go get it himself? Is he stupid?
I'm kind of retarded. My pain is still far greater than yours!
Eddy and Rolf battle it out to see who can endure the most pain, and whoever wins gets one of the hardest Urban Ranger badges. This is such a good idea. Seeing Eddy go up against Rolf in a fight of stubbornness is great. Eddy talks a lot of shit, but for once we get to see him put his money where his mouth is.
Big mouth.
However, there's one glaring flaw, which is its ending, since Eddy passed out 1 second before Rolf, meaning he lost and Rolf won. That's super frustrating, since Eddy went through all this pain and suffering for absolutely nothing. This isn't funny, it's just annoying, unfair, stupid, and mean-spirited. mean-spirited. Not even saying Eddy has to outright win, since that would be sort of wrong since he did disrespect the Rangers in the beginning for no good reason. But at the very least, have the two of them tie, meaning they both get the badge or none of them do. Hell, they could even keep the ending, but make it so Eddy gets a second place badge that's slightly smaller and not as cool looking. And no, I don't count the Crybaby badge as a second place prize. That's also obnoxious too. Anyway, like I said, if it wasn't for the ending, this would have easily been a 7 or maybe even 8 out of 10 episode, making it one of the best from season 5. The concept is great, Eddy is at one of his best here, and even the slapstick works really well too.
I want revenge! I'm stuck! Get him!
Kevin accidentally ruins one of Eddy's scams, although Eddy thinks he did it intentionally. Because of this, he decides to get revenge on him and spends a good 3 minutes trying to throw a bag of shit at him. And no, I'm not kidding. It's literally a bag of shit. I mean, really, what else do you think that is? Anyway, Kevin didn't do anything wrong here, and I'm sure Eddy's scam would have messed up due to Ed or something else eventually. But either way, Eddy still thinks it's Kevin's fault, which is part of this episode's charm. It's such a simple premise, and it all stems from Eddy hating Kevin, which is pretty funny. He gets so obsessed by the end that he wants to fire Ed at Kevin, which is crazy. At that point, you might as well just give him a Palestinian alarm clock. Eddy can't think of a scam for one, so he buys one off of Jimmy. This is a pretty unique and fun idea, but in execution, it's sort of just alright. Once Jimmy comes up with a scam, it's actually solid, but the first half is what holds it back. It's interesting to see Eddy unable to come up with a scam, but again, I'm mainly waiting for Jimmy to show up so he can boss the Eds around. This feels like a sequel to Ed in a Half Shell, and even if it smells like an Ed, since Jimmy's much more smart and a bit scummy here.
Somebody touch my spaghetti! Beware of the toucher! Serial toucher on the loose!
Everyone, or mainly just Double D and Sarah, thinks someone is going around and touching people's stuff. This is the very first episode of the series, and it definitely feels like it. This introduces the Eds fairly well. Eddy is sort of a jerk, as well as the leader. Double D is organized but way too fearful, and Ed is strong but dumb. Also, it's sort of weird how Double D is the first character, and especially Ed to be shown on screen, since Eddy is the main character. There are some weird aspects about it, like how there's not a scam, and how the Eds genuinely want to catch the toucher in order to get more respect. They actually eat Jawbreakers at the end, even though they lose them, and Double D possibly has a crush on Sarah too?
What the fuck?
Yeah, thank God they never tried doing something like this again. Anyway, there's also the scene where they tie Johnny up, which is great and also includes by far the best face in the show. There's some great ones, but let's face it, we all know this face is spicy goodness.
Like a bouse.
Buy me more jewelry!
Kevin, Rolf, and Johnny are away, meaning the only people the Eds can scam are Sarah, Jimmy, and Naz. It sucks that we get the 3 least interesting characters, but at least it's something different. They do force the Eds to come up with a scam that appeals to only the 3 of them, which is creative. Painting things gold is actually a pretty good idea for a scam. For kids, it's hard to tell apart real gold from paint, especially since they've never seen it before. The kids have an election between Eddy and Plank to see who's the king of the cul-de-sac. Love how Eddy takes this so seriously, even though he's up against Plank. The ending is very predictable. Of course, Plank was going to win, although it's funny that Double D voted for Plank too. But yeah, fun episode, although the Fosters one was leagues better.
Oh, I was actually coming out here to pick up a cupcake.
Double D wrote you a poem.
For me? Get lost. Oh, that's so... Hey!
Double D gives Sarah a flower, which makes her fall in love with him. This is by far one of the weirdest episodes in the whole show. Sarah is what, like 3, 4, or even 5 years younger than Double D, yet she falls in love with him? I get that she's just a kid and kids have dumb crushes, but even so, this one was tough to watch. That being said, since it's so cringy, I can't really dislike it since I'm a big fan of cringe content. Watamote is very entertaining, even though it makes me want to massage my eyelids with plastic forks at times. Anyway, at least it's refreshing to see Sarah not be a loud and obnoxious asshole every time she's on screen. Wish we got to see her act like this in other episodes, but then again, that's what makes this one so unique. Not entirely sure if this placement makes sense. Maybe it should go higher, maybe a lot lower. I don't know, but either way, it's hashtag cringe. Wish we could turn back time. The The Eds find a bunch of stuff that reminds them of their past scams. This is sort of a clip show episode, although not really since they don't reuse any footage at all. Even the Powerpuff Girls clip show reused some clips from the earlier seasons. Anyway, I'd imagine this was made since they had fun ideas for scams, but they couldn't figure out how to make a full episode on them. Then again, they've put scams in episodes that really didn't need them, so who knows. Either way, it's a fun episode, and the giant pancake scene is epic.
What in heaven's name have you done?
It's a boy!
Hello, my name's
Glenn Quagmire,
and I'm gonna take a shotgun blast to the
bee bush.
Johnny pays the Eds to let Plank go on a bunch of fun and dangerous rides, although at the end he gets his money back, which is pretty dumb. This is one of the few times where the Eds didn't really scam someone, they did and gave someone exactly what they wanted. Plank wanted to go on some thrilling rides and the Eds made them, so why does Johnny get his money back? I get that Eddy didn't care if Plank broke or not, but still, them getting hurt makes up for this. Anyway, I really like how this isn't a Johnny episode, but instead it's a Plank one. There's episodes where Plank has a bigger role, but this is the only episode where he's sort of the main character. The kids are going on a school trip to the Jawbreaker Factory, however Ed believes that the sky is falling and wants to stay inside. This is definitely one of the more memorable season 5 episodes, although I still wouldn't say it's one of the best. The concept is fun, slapstick is decent, and it turns out that the sky actually was falling, which still catches me off guard even on multiple rewatches.
I don't feel so good.
Anyway, I remember seeing this back when it first aired on TV. That's because while I was watching this, I ate almost a full bag of Cheetos, or at least more than half of it, which is a lot for a little kid. So shortly after it finished, I ran into my bathroom and threw up either in the sink or the toilet. Don't remember which one, but then again, it's been 18 years since then. Can you really blame me for forgetting? Also, I didn't realize until recording this, but it's pretty crazy how I threw up after this episode ended, which is exactly how the episode ends itself. Wait, is this a Chainsaw Man reference?
You're gonna mow the entire football field!
That doesn't sound so bad.
With your teeth!
Ed's tooth is loose and Eddy wants it so the tooth fairy can come and give him cash. This is another super simple but fun one, especially when everyone tries to get Ed's tooth out. Surprised Eddy didn't try the obvious, which is just rubbing it out with his hands, but then again, that's not really a good lesson for kids, I guess. Anyway, thank God this was leagues better than the Powerpuff Girls tooth episode, because that one was a big load of...
I'm a woodpecker! Except with dirt.
Eddy convinces everyone that rules are dumb, so they all decide to do whatever the hell they want. It's pretty predictable, but at least we get to see all the kids have fun with Eddy and Ed, which is rare. The ending is sort of dumb. All the kids put the Eds in the cage, which is fine, but why is Double D here? Is it because he's the one who called everyone's parents to tell them that their kids were breaking rules? He's sort of a dick for doing that, but at the same time, someone was either going to get hurt or die. Look at Jimmy and Sarah. I'm sure the two of them got diabetes within the span of 10 minutes. Anyway, wasn't this a complaint people had with Double D in Mission Ed Possible, where he went against Ed and Eddy's wishes in order to do the right thing? This episode shows that while Double D is loyal to his friends, he's also not going to do something that he thinks is morally wrong.
He wrote an entire song about come.
Big Chungus, Chungus.
The Eds decide to clean Rolf's animals, which leads to Ed getting sick since he's allergic to bunnies. This is another one that sort of feels like 2 episodes mixed into one. It's not the worst example of this, but the Ed being sick plotline doesn't happen until about halfway through. Also, the ending for this one is weird. There's just thousands of bunnies in the cul-de-sac, because why not?
Fixed camera.
The Eds go around taking pictures of everyone, and Eddy wants to make a calendar out of them. This is one of the dumbest ideas Eddy has ever had. Would kids go out of their way to buy a goddamn calendar? Maybe if it was a Heaven's Lost Property calendar, then that'd be pretty epic, but one made out of everyone in the neighborhood? That's just stupid. Not only that, but this episode takes place during summer, so even if Eddy made a bunch of calendars, who'd want to buy them at this time of year? Maybe he would start the calendar in July and have it end next year in June? I don't know. Anyway, since there are only 12 characters, that'd mean there'd be 1 kid on each month, so that would be sort of cool, I guess.
What the fuck?
The Eds do a circus show, then they try fixing people's stuff, and then they make a sauna. Yeah, there's 3 different scams in this one 11-minute episode, which is pretty impressive, and surprisingly, it doesn't feel rushed or underdeveloped at all. They're all decent ideas, and this does a great job at showing how Eddy constantly needs to be doing something and how easily he can move on from something that fails. Also, this ends with Johnny's house getting destroyed, so that's pretty fucking cool.
They call me 007, 0 friends, 0 cash, 7 mental illnesses.
All the kids are going to Jimmy's house, and the Eds try to figure out why.
Why?
This is a fun premise, although the plot doesn't actually start until about halfway through. The first centers on the Eds, as well as Kevin having a garage sale, which again, both feel like 2 separate ideas that don't really connect. The Eds being too dumb to realize that the kids are just having a party is funny, but shouldn't Double D be smart enough to figure this out? And again, he is socially awkward, so who knows? Anyway, this is another one that ends with someone's house being blown the fuck up.
You'll never take us alive!
The Eds, along with Johnny, are tired of being in school, so they try to bust out and leave. This is another great concept, as well as one of the more memorable episodes, although I still wouldn't say it's amazing. Maybe if the escape scene was longer, or if the episode was longer in general, it would have been better. This works as is, but I feel like you could expand this to a full 22-minute episode. Also, I'm surprised Double D agreed to this since he knows how wrong it is. Eddy threatens to write his locker combination in the girls' bathroom, but that's not what gets him to help them out. Instead, he gets tired of gym class, which is sort of dumb. Shouldn't he be used to this by now? Being blackmailed by Eddy is more interesting, as well as a better reason for Double D to stoop this low, but whatever, it doesn't ruin the episode.
It's free real estate.
Same beer, same show.
You want to see something intense?
The Eds try out a scam, which fails, so Eddy tweaks it over and over again, hoping that it'll eventually work. Now, to be fair, the scam is actually pretty good and seems fun, which is probably why Eddy is so stubborn about not changing it. However, there's one simple solution to this problem, which is not inviting Johnny or just tying him up. If Johnny wasn't here, he wouldn't be a dick and ruin everything. I'm sure everyone else, or at least Rolf, would have enjoyed trying to shoot Ed with a hairy bowl sack. The Eds find Sarah's diary and Eddy reads it because he's an asshole. Or actually, is he? Yeah, I know, Sarah is just a kid and all, but come on, everyone hates her and it's refreshing to see her be miserable for once. Fuck her and her stupid diary. This is why diaries are so dumb and pointless. Oh, look at me, I'm gonna write down everything in a book that I don't want people to read. Well, if you don't want people to read your thoughts, then don't write it down on paper for people to read. That's like looking at corn and not deleting your history or not using incognito mode. Anyway, Eddy unlocks Sarah's diary by using his hair, which is really cool. I wish he used his hair like this again in other episodes.
You're not my dad!
Plank's parents visit and the Eds decide to watch them. Whether or not Plank is actually alive or not and talks to Johnny is debatable, but I've always thought Johnny is just that crazy. That's probably why he's so tired, not because he's walking around and carrying 2 planks of wood, but because he's constantly listening to 3 different voices inside his head. Anyway, this is a fun idea, and I sort of wish we got to see more of Plank's family or maybe even friends. They could have done an episode where Plank gets a new friend, but then starts having more fun with him instead of Johnny. I don't know, maybe this as well as Dear Ed were enough, but either way, this is good.
I see you, Zap.
Hey, Plank! Your mom is calling!
Everyone in the cul-de-sac plays hide and seek. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Sort of surprised to see all the kids agree to let the Eds play, even though they don't like them. What's even more shocking is how they're all fine with the Eds cheating by taking the home base with them wherever they go. Anyway, I thought all the kids would stop playing once the Eds started looking for them. They just go into their houses and do something else since they don't want to play with them, but again, that surprisingly didn't happen.
For decades, we parade the cake every Christmas.
Must your father and I remind you to finish your homework?
That is right, son. A mind is a terrible organ to shovel.
Have you gone mad?
This is another bizarre one. It's apparently Piggy Bank Day, which isn't even an actual holiday. Meanwhile, Ed thinks it's Christmas even though it's July. So technically speaking, this is a Christmas episode, although not as special like Jingle Jingle Jangle. Anyway, why are the kids dumb enough to give the Eds their piggy banks? Don't they know how greedy Eddy is? Did they really think he just helped them out without taking their money? The scam ends up failing, but then they start singing Christmas songs, make some money, and actually end up with Jawbreakers. However, they don't get to eat them since Ed took them and gave them away, so that sucks. Anyway, do any of you guys still have piggy banks? Because I used to, but not anymore. The only thing I have is this big ass Yankees bottle, which I've had for over a decade now. Don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I sure as hell ain't bringing it to the bank because they're gonna take like 15% of what it's worth, and that's fucking bullshit.
It's getting hot in here. Oink, oink. I am a lizard! Oink, oink, oink.
The kids go to the creek, however the Eds can't enjoy themselves since Kevin took the best spot, which is in the shade. The plot is sort of dumb. Do they really need to take that specific spot? Then again, this is another showcase of how stubborn and stupid Eddy is, so I guess it's fine. Also, if the Eds really wanted this spot so badly, then why didn't they camp out here the night before instead of in Ed's backyard? Maybe that would be considered trespassing or something, but then again, I think this is just a public area. Hell, there aren't even any lifeguards here. This is a random creek nearby, and I'm actually surprised the show never used this setting again. There's only a small amount of locations in the series, yet this is only used once, which I never noticed. Anyway, the Eds get sunburnt at the end, and let me tell you, getting sunburnt fucking blows diarrhea nuggets. I've been sunburnt before multiple times, and a few years ago, I got burned so bad that I now have spots on my shoulders, which I'm obviously not going to show. Is that normal? Is that bad? Is it skin cancer?
Show's over, cheapskate!
The Eds want to watch a monster movie marathon, however Sarah kicks them out, so now they go around the cul-de-sac to try and find a TV. This is another fun and simple premise, although the Eds could have just gone to Double D or Eddy's house.
We could just go to our house, Eddy.
What? And ruin the plot?
Never mind, they outright mention this, so guess I can't complain then. What I can complain about though is Sarah, because she's god-awful here. The only reason she kicks them out is because she got annoyed when they went into the kitchen to get food. Like, what the fuck? Just give them 2 minutes to get snacks and go back downstairs. I don't see what the problem is. This also doesn't merit her throwing them out of the house entirely. Maybe they were annoying her, but she even said get out of the kitchen, not the house. What they should have done was have the Eds start watching the marathon, they all, or at least Ed, starts gooning over it, which makes a bunch of noise and bothers Sarah. That would have been a genuine and understandable reason for throwing them out instead of Sarah just being a goddamn fucking asshole again. Anyway, pretty sure Ed is strong enough to break his window open, but then again, maybe he didn't want to since his parents would get pissed. Although he did carry the chimney from one side of the house to the other, so who knows. Either way, fun episode, although it's sort of disappointing not seeing the Eds try and go to Johnny or Naz's house.
He got in there with 2 coconuts!
Rolf hires Ed to work for him, although Double D and Eddy sort of mess things up. Double D makes this cool redstone potato factory, which isn't bad, but turning them into french fries is really stupid. Like, just because french fries are top tier food doesn't mean Rolf was going to make them. That's your own fault for doing this. Makes sense why Rolf would be pissed at you for wasting food. Anyway, Double D and Ed get jawbreakers at the end and actually get to eat them, which was surprising.
Rolf's a jerk!
We hate
I wanna walk like you, talk like you, choo.
The Eds find out that Kevin has a garage full of jawbreakers, so they try to befriend him, hoping he'll give them some. The scene where Kevin was genuinely trying to be nice to the Eds is great, and I believe this is the only time he tried doing this before. Despite Kevin not liking them, he still wanted to give them jawbreakers for free, but of course Eddy is an asshole, which is why he didn't get any. But yeah, this one scene does a lot for Kevin as a character, and could be one of the main reasons why he never gives the Eds plenty of chances like Rolf and Johnny do. Anyway, this is yet another episode that ends with someone's house being destroyed, so I guess this confirms that the Eds live in California. Ed hides Eddy's corn magazines, but forgets where he hid them. And no, I'm not joking. These are actually corn magazines. How the hell were they able to get away with this? As a kid, I never understood this, but then again, I'm sure most kids didn't either. Anyway, not much to say. It's dumb, it's fun, I like it, and Eddy learned a very important lesson, which is that gooning is bad for him.
bad for me. Oh, there are no badges for sneaky wee roaches.
How's a squirt like you end up with such a cool uniform?
I see you like Joni's uniform, Big Mouth Eddy. Big Mouth Eddy. Big Mouth, Big Mouth.
The first Urban Rangers episode where the Eds try to get a badge but fail. Kind of forgot how little the Urban Rangers were used in the series since they're only in a few episodes. Then again, at least they're in multiple ones, unlike Captain Melonhead, who's only in one, as well as Big Picture Show. Anyway, it's pretty repetitive. The Eds fail at getting some of the most basic badges. That's about it. However, I will say that I for sure would have failed the last one since I wouldn't be able to hold myself back from yelling at Sarah. Seriously, Sarah needs to get eaten by a lion or run over by a dude in a Hummer.
Bend to the king.
Anyway, I saw a video where someone complained about the Eds failing despite making so many scams that were more complex in getting these badges. The thing is, Double D could easily become a ranger and get all these badges if he wanted to, however it's mainly Ed and Eddy's fault for failing so many times. As for the scams, yes, they are complex and require a lot of work, but they're only able to get made due to all the Eds working together. Eddy comes up with the idea, Ed gathers materials, and Double D usually builds them. Ed is too dumb to do most things, and Eddy is only useful for coming up with ideas and tricking people, both of which don't help them here.
Good afternoon, neighbor. I baked you a pie.
Oh boy, what flavor?
Pie.
Eddy tries to scam everyone into thinking that it's still summer, even though the first day of school is tomorrow. Now I know I already mentioned this before, but how is this not the first episode of season 5? This is where the Eds go back to school, yet somehow Mission Ed Possible is labeled as the first episode and aired before this? How did they manage to fuck up something so simple? Anyway, I know some people don't like season 5 or the idea of the kids going to school, but I really like the premise. There's only so much you can do with so few characters and so few settings that something sort of had to change. Now as for the episode itself, it's another one of those that sort of feels like 2 different episodes put into one. You could start it halfway through and it really wouldn't feel like you missed anything. The plot would just be about the Eds trying to switch their homerooms, which is pretty decent. Then again, I guess a plot like this could only work as soon as they start school. However, aren't there some schools that switch homerooms around like 3 or 4 times throughout the year? Anyway, I know the Cancer Sisters love the Eds, but why would they go out of their way to get funky with them in a bathroom? That's just disgusting.
Disgusting! Shut up! I'm trying to sleep!
Double D goons all night long and doesn't sleep. However, Ed and Eddy don't care and force him to help them with their scam. There's this one part where Sarah and Jimmy take Double D, and if Ed and Eddy didn't come, they would have cut open his goddamn head. That's crazy, but not as crazy as the entire cul-de-sac being flooded. Guess this shows how important Double D is, since if it wasn't for him, all the kids would be dead. Anyway, my man just wanted to sleep. Hashtag Scotland forever.
You throw like a 2-year-old.
Yeah, and 2-year-olds are not even good at stuffing sausages.
Eddy notices how weak Double D is, so he tries to make him harder, better, faster, stronger. This is a really fun concept, although it's not executed the best. The first 2 minutes, while not bad, are basically filler, which is annoying since that's more time that could have been spent on Double D wrestling. Sort of forgot how only half of it takes place in the junkyard, which again is disappointing since it's by far the most memorable part. Although that's probably due to the Flash game existing, which I haven't played in well over a decade. Not only that one, but a decent chunk of the Eds Flash games were pretty fun, and it sucks that they're all gone. Anyway, this is another one that ends with the Cancer Sisters beating up the Eds, but at least it makes sense here since they are in an arena. The fight is also pretty fun too, especially since Ed refuses to do anything since his mom said he can't beat up girls.
Where are we?
Hey, Kevin, watch, relax, go with the flow.
You're kidding me.
The Eds are missing, so all the kids try to find them. This is by far one of the most unique episodes. Nearly an entire episode without the Eds is such a great idea. The Eds are the most entertaining characters, so it's risky to remove them, which is why some episodes didn't work out too well. But this is basically a Kevin episode since he's the one who's so obsessed with finding out where the Eds went. Despite not liking them, he sort of needs them around, otherwise he'll get bored, or maybe he's just so used to dealing with them every day up to this point.
What are you, fucking retarded?
Yes, Kevin?
So what you're saying is, you're a...
Double D notices how stupid everyone is, so he tries to help them learn to become smarter. This is another fun one, although the ending is sort of weird. The lesson is pretty much let everyone be stupid, or it could either be don't force people to do something they don't want to do. This also doesn't feel forced or out of character for the kids since they always fall for the Ed scam, so they're already dumb.
Pink belly! Pink belly! Pink belly!
This is sort of a light Double D torture corn, although I'm still unsure whether I want to outright call it one. Yes, he does suffer throughout the episode, but he's not miserable, and again, he's sort of forcing the kids to do something they clearly don't want to do. There's also the scene where all the kids are doing a scavenger hunt since they think the reward is a Jawbreaker. Naz is having fun, but then Kevin points out how stupid it is since he has a full garage of Jawbreakers, which results in them both leaving. This is a nice callback, and I'm glad it's something the episode mentions. It shows that the kids don't mind trying out the Ed scams, but they're not going to bother with getting Jawbreakers since Kevin already has so many.
I can't remember what happened in September.
Somebody's up top. What the fuck?
Eddy gets a Jawbreaker and tells how he got it. However, it gets overshadowed since the other kids start telling flashbacks of their own. This is another very unique episode, and it also adds a surprising amount of lore too. We find out how Plank got the chip on his head. Apparently Naz used to be morbidly obese, and it turns out the Eds broke Jimmy's teeth, which is why he wears braces. The last flashback shows how the Eds met, and for some reason Double D still has his hat on. This is weird since it's rumored and implied that Double D started wearing his hat after what's known as a dodgeball incident. The other popular theory is that he did some kind of experiment and hurt himself, so he wears a hat to cover some kind of scar. Anyway, this is sort of like a mix of 1 + 1 = Ed and the good old Ed, although it still feels like its own distinct episode.
Hey!
The kids find a boomerang that when touched turns them into completely different characters. Jimmy turns into a macho man, Sarah isn't a horrendous detestable piece of shit, Ed becomes smart, Eddy acts like a mother, and Double D.
I'm getting the need to feel the breeze between my knees. That's the ticket.
What the fuck? This is another weird but obviously fun one. I feel like the writers just wanted to show off what it'd be like if the characters acted out of character. They never explain where the boomerang came from and why it makes everyone act differently, but it's one of those things that doesn't really need to be answered. If I were to guess, maybe this is some cursed object that the Cancer Sisters have that they lost, but hey, that's just a theory.
Mr. Krabs, I have an idea. Let go of my ball, Johnny.
Ed has an idea for a scam, although it doesn't make any sense. This is another one that has a great premise, but its main problem is that the actual plot doesn't start until almost halfway through. The intro is really fun, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have much to do with the rest of the episode, which sucks, because the second half is great. Double D carries a rock around looking for an X, even though there's only Q's on the ground. Eddy is dressed like this, Johnny vores Kevin's football, and Rolf throws everyone inside a giant clam. Why?
Why?
The ending is super weird too. A bunch of birds come and start attacking the Eds.
What are those?
All the kids are having fun doing certain things, but when the Eds try to copy them, the kids start doing something new. This is timeless. Fads are always going to be a thing. Hell, I remember when silly bands were super popular for like a month. Pretty sure they got banned in my school since everyone started wearing them. There were also fidget spinners, Fortnite, moon sand, Pop-Tarts, and a bunch of other shit too. Anyway, while the idea is great, my main problem is that the Eds didn't really do anything wrong to deserve being treated like this. All they want to do is hang out with and get along with the other kids, but for some reason they're all dicks.
Dick! This wall tastes like
dick! Makes you feel super bad for them, especially since it ends with everyone wearing what the Eds made.
This for that and that for this and these for those and those for these and that and these for that and this and these for those.
The Eds want to make an omelet, but they need an egg, so they ask Rolf for one, but he asks for something in return. So they try to get Rolf what he wants, but in order to get that, they need to trade something with someone else, rinse and repeat. This is one of those scavenger hunt trading episodes. It's been done in other shows like Pony. I know some people don't like them, but I usually do. The premise is very simple, but it's fun seeing how complicated it is for the characters to get just this one object. This is especially so for this episode since all the Eds want is an egg to make an omelet. If it's just one singular egg they're missing, wouldn't Ed or Eddy have one in their kitchen? Then again, if they did, then the episode would be over in 2 minutes, so I guess that makes sense. Anyway, the ending is kind of annoying since Ed breaks it, which means all that work they did was for nothing. Now I'm fine with an anticlimactic ending, and even one where the Eds don't win, but wouldn't it have been more funny if the egg was an actual chicken egg? Ed breaks it, or it just hatches on its own and a chicken comes out. That feels like a better ending than this.
What is this? I'm stuck!
We're a family again.
Ed sleepwalks again and somehow gets his finger stuck in a ship in a bottle, which belongs to the Cancer Sisters. This is a really good way to recycle a plotline from a past episode, since it does something new with it, which makes it feel distinct. The first episode was all about Ed sleepwalking and seeing all the crazy things he does in his sleep. This, however, shows the aftermath as well as consequences for doing so, and holy shit, those consequences will never be the same.
Consequences will never be the same.
The Cancer Sisters come to the cul-de-sac and turn it into California, which is crazy. They're just 3 girls, yet they're able to destroy an entire neighborhood by themselves. Makes you feel really bad for everyone, including the Eds, since they didn't mean for any of this to happen. Now I like the Cancer Sisters, but even so, this episode makes me realize why some people can't stand them. Then again, they are the strongest characters in the series, since even Sarah is afraid of them, so I guess that's a good thing, since Sarah sucks. Eddy finds out that Kevin is afraid of needles, so he and Ed scare the shit out of him. I think this is going to be a controversial placement since I believe some people dislike it for being mean-spirited. Now, although this is basically a Kevin torture corn, I really don't mind it, especially since this is the only one in the series. Kevin has gotten away with some awful things. I can smile for the Ed and your Ed here, so to see him suffer like this is refreshing. Now, the thing is, Kevin doesn't do anything in this episode to deserve this. He doesn't shit-talk Eddy. In fact, he doesn't even do anything to him. Eddy goes out of his way to bully him, which is super scummy, but it shows how much he hates Kevin since he's jealous of him. What makes this episode interesting is that we get to see a side of Kevin that we rarely see. Despite being the super cool tough guy, Kevin is just as scared of needles as everyone else. He may be able to put on an act and be tough at times, but at the end of the day, he's not much different than all the other kids. Yes, we do sort of know this already, but it's still neat to be reminded of this since it's a pretty big part of his character. Also, I'm sure everyone else hates needles, including me. I fucking despise getting them. Whenever I do, I have to look away and grip onto something as hard as I can. There was this one time a few years back where I wasn't able to hold on to something, so I got so nervous that I ended up passing out and had a seizure. But anyway, one big aspect that prevents this episode from being bad is its ending. Kevin is about to beat the crap out of Eddy and Ed, but Double D suggests that Eddy gets a booster shot instead, which is great. The piece of shit gets exactly what he deserves. He bullied Kevin for no good reason, and now he gets a big fat needle shoved up his ass, or I guess arm. This is also another instance where we see Kevin and Double D get along. While Kevin doesn't like him, he sure as hell doesn't hate him like he does with Eddy. Also, more importantly, Kevin gets over his fear, and again, Eddy's the one who gets a needle. If it ended with Kevin still being scared, or at least without Eddy being punished in some sort of way, then this most likely would have been a bottom 10 or even 5 episode. It would have resulted in a super mean-spirited torture corn that's unfun to watch, but thankfully it didn't. Eddy shows Double D and Ed his brother's room. They find a treasure map and go searching for the treasure. This is an episode where all 3 acts are equally as solid, and there's not one scene or part that's by far the most enjoyable. After 3 seasons, we finally get to know more about Eddy's brother since we see his room. The Ed's trying to figure out where the map leads to is fun, especially since Ed is the one who realizes how to solve it. Them knowingly going to the trailer park is unique as well. Normally the sisters are the ones who go to the Eds, but this time it's the Eds who are dumb enough to go to them.
In here.
This is also some more foreshadowing for the movie since it reveals that Eddy's brother is a dick. Then again, it's never stated or revealed that his brother knew where the map would lead. He could have just drawn some random lines hoping Eddy would waste a whole day trying to figure out what it means. Then again, he did make another map in boo haha, so maybe he did know the Cancer Sisters live here, but it's still never explained if the case the Eds found was put there by his brother or if it's just one big coincidence. Maybe Eddy's brother just wanted Eddy to go there and get sexually harassed by them. Who knows?
What happened to the stairs? My parents took them down because I am grounded.
That's disturbing.
Eddy's grounded, so Eddy and Double D try to bust him out of his house. They never explain why he's grounded, although considering how much Sarah threatens him, I'm assuming she decided to tell their mom he did something wrong for once. Could be wrong, but either way I'm fine not knowing since anyone could come up with whatever reason they want.
Say my name.
Someone writes Eddy as a no-neck chump on the wall, which pisses off Eddy, so he decides to dress up and become someone different. This is another one that might be a bit controversial since the premise is really stupid. Like, who cares what others think of you? Don't all the kids in the cul-de-sac already dislike you? Do you really think this is worth throwing your old life away and becoming someone completely different? Then again, he was paranoid and X marks the Ed, so this is just part of Eddy's character. There's also the fact that for some reason, none of the other kids realize that it's Eddy in a disguise. This is sort of difficult to believe, but like I've already said before, the kids are pretty dumb, so this isn't that unbelievable. Either way, even though this, as well as the plot, are sort of dumb, they don't ruin what is a solid episode. As the series went on, Eddy became more of a dick. However, this is a rare instance that reminds us that while Eddy is very flawed, he's not an awful person. He still does want to befriend all the kids and be respected by them, but isn't able to due to his reputation. If he threw all that away and started over, he might be able to get along with them, which he actually does. That is until the kids start laughing at him, which scares him enough into becoming someone different again. What's so great about this moment is that it's Eddy's fault for leaving due to him being paranoid. Yes, the kids are laughing at him, but he's the one who takes this so seriously, which is why he gives up and becomes someone else. The kids aren't dicks either. They're actually concerned for him once he leaves.
I got a boner!
Blow a kiss to your fans, Naz. Okay.
The Eds, Kevin, and Johnny all have a crush on Naz, so I guess Johnny isn't the only one who has morning wood. Never got the impression that Johnny liked Naz before, but at least Rolf and Jimmy don't, so it's not like literally everyone does. does. Despite Naz getting along with Kevin a lot, it's refreshing to see her get annoyed by him and treat him just the same as Johnny and the Eds. The ending is also really weird too, since nothing gets resolved. Naz is still freaked out by everyone, and the Eds mistakenly sing to Jimmy outside his house since they thought it was Naz's.
First I fuck my sister, then I fuck my mom.
Sarah is busy for the day, so she forces the Eds to hang out with Jimmy. Now, why exactly does Jimmy need to be with someone? He's been by himself before without any problems. Anyway, this might be the most any character has developed throughout one episode. Jimmy goes from a typical wimp to someone who's more of a clever jerk. Sure, the characters do change as the series goes on. For example, Johnny becomes much more weird, but nothing as drastic as this. Jimmy isn't an entirely different character, but this is the reason why he acts the way he does in episodes like If It Smells Like an Ed and Stuck in Ed. Some people hate Jimmy because of this, which I don't really get, since it's entirely Eddie's fault Jimmy learned to act this way. If he let him hang out with Ed, maybe he would have gotten more dumb and might have even started to annoy Sarah too. That would be sort of interesting actually. Sarah gets reminded of her brother whenever she sees Jimmy, so she makes Ed act differently. I don't know, just a random idea I thought of. Does it suck? Maybe, but not as much as Sarah. She can go fuck herself.
I wanna go home.
Rolf's homesick, Eddie. Where'd you come from? Blame my parents, Eddy.
Rolf is homesick, so the Eds scam him into thinking he's back in his hometown. This is basically a ripoff, as well as a worse version of Texas from SpongeBob, although still a solid episode on its own. There's unfortunately no song in it, but what prevents it as a blatant ripoff is that there's no lesson. Texas had Sandy realize that Bikini Bottom is her new home, but here Rolf just gets pissed at the Eds and makes Ed beat the shit out of Eddie and Double D.
That's my horse!
The Eds find a bunch of Canadian squirt guns, show them off to the kids, and they all buy them without any issues. If Eddie wasn't such an asshole, the episode could have ended here with the Eds getting plenty of cash to buy like 4 Jawbreakers for each of them. But no, Eddie had to piss everyone off, and then the Cancer Sisters had to come because why not? Guess it's because it's a Western episode, so it's not totally unnecessary, but either way, I'd be much more fine with them being here if Eddie wasn't such a dick earlier on. There's a power outage in the cul-de-sac, and Ed convinces everyone that it's caused by underground mole mutants, which they believe since they're dumb. This is one of the few episodes that takes place at night, and this is also one where Eddie gets a shit ton of cash, even though he loses it at the end. I would say this is the most amount of money he's ever had in the series, but he got an insane amount in Truth or Ed. Anyway, this is another episode I remember watching back when it first aired, mainly because of how stupid I was while watching it. So this episode aired on the same night and at the exact same time as Where's Gary from SpongeBob. And yes, I even double checked to make sure I wasn't crazy or remembering wrong. They both aired on the same day. Anyway, being the dumb kid that I was, instead of picking one to watch, I tried watching both at the same time. Now you're probably thinking, wait, you had 2 TVs and had them playing side by side? No, you baka. I changed the channel every minute and watched a minute from each episode. So instead of watching one episode, I basically didn't fully watch either of them. Although I think I gave up after this episode ended and just watched the rest of Where's Gary, which I'm glad I did. That's because the episode after this was a shower one, and we already know that's... Eddie scams Jimmy, so Rolf helps him get revenge by scamming Eddie. Yet another really fun idea, for once Eddie gets scammed since he's that stupid. Genuinely shocked how Eddie can come up with so many scams that aren't half bad, yet is still this dumb. While seeing Rolf scam Eddie is neat, I think it would have been more interesting to have Jimmy scam him all by himself. Like I got done saying a few episodes ago, Jimmy developed and learned from Eddie, so wouldn't it make sense for him to come up with his own scam? He could even get help from Rolf and Johnny too, but either way, on its own, it's still pretty fun.
You are fake news.
I'd rather wear its underwear for a week. Not today, Eddie. I'm flying solo.
Eddie takes over the newspaper club and writes fake stories. This is a very similar premise to that One Pony episode, although it's not a ripoff since this came out like 5 or 6 years before it. This is also sort of a reused concept from Read All About Ed, however both plots are completely different. That was much more about the Eds delivering papers, where this is about the contents of what's in the paper. Either way, I'm surprised they managed to take a plot from a very early episode and do something that's different with it.
What's on TV?
You always pick something stupid.
Hey, on over. We're watching infomercials.
Fixing these dolls' teeth.
The Cancer Sisters go on vacation, even though it's just in the cul-de-sac. They've bothered the Eds before, but not in their actual homes, or at least not before this episode. Because of this, the stakes are pretty high, and you're left wondering how the Eds are going to get them to leave. At first, I thought the Eds were going to leave and hang out in the trailer park, but I guess forcing them out is more interesting.
I don't feel so good.
Also, it ends with Eddy, Double D, and Kevin lifting and pushing the Cancer Sisters trailer, which is insane. How the hell are they strong enough to lift that? Ed, I could understand, but these three doing this is super duper pooper crazy.
I didn't fight you in, but I just shampooed the rugs. Oops. Johnny, you dropped your face.
Everyone except for the Eds have the China virus, which drives Eddy crazy since he doesn't have anyone to scam. This is a really important episode for Eddy because it shows how much he's a dick since he's so reliant on others. He needs to be around people, or specifically people with cash. Not only that, but I've always wondered why the Eds don't just hang out with themselves and have fun, which this episode addresses. Sure, that's not as fun as being with more people, but I'm sure they can all find something to do. They did almost watch an all-day monster movie marathon, but again, this is something we don't see them do a whole lot.
Check this out!
Timmy's dead!
The Eds find a hypno wheel and use it on all the kids. This is sort of like an earlier version of Hand Me Down Ed, except there's an actual reason for why the kids act the way they do.
What's Eddy doing, Plank? 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 What have you done? Plank is a mindless zombie!
This is yet another episode that ends with the Cancer Sisters coming to ruin everything. This is sort of dumb since it definitely could have ended in a different way without them. Maybe Ed uses the hypno wheel on Eddy, or they accidentally use it in a mirror. But the Eds, or mainly Eddy, did deserve this, which is why I'm fine with how it ends. The Eds make a city for everyone to explore and have fun in. The kids have never seen or either barely been to the city before, which shows that they almost never leave their neighborhood. Despite making money fair and square, Eddy loses it all at the end, which is pretty frustrating. I get that he made everyone fight each other and all, but either way the kid still willingly gave them his money and got what they wanted. Anyway, this shows why cities suck. Most of them are shitholes. Get the hell out of there and move somewhere else like North Dakota.
Imagination.
The Eds stick around in the junkyard and pretend that they're escaping a planet from a movie that Ed wants to see. That's basically the whole episode. There's not much of a plot and most of it just includes the Eds. Kevin along with the Cancer Sisters make an appearance, but only for a minute. This is considered to be a fan favorite, which it's definitely one of the stronger early episodes, but not one I'd consider to be an all-time best. There's a certain appeal of seeing the Eds have fun by themselves, but besides that, it's nothing groundbreaking.
Guess who's back? Back again.
Are you gonna get the Ed kebabs, or the Eddy pizza, or the Double D spaghetti?
I'm ordering the barf bag.
Eddy tricks everyone into thinking that his brother is coming home, which scares the poo-poo out of them. Despite none of them, including Double D and Ed, seeing his brother before, it's strange that they all believe that he's coming back. What's even more crazy is that all of them believe the stories Eddy tells about him, even though again, they've never seen him. For all they know, Eddy could be lying about having a brother at all. But like I've said plenty of times already, all the kids are capital D-U-M-B.
Pirate.
The Eds bring Jimmy and Johnny onto a cruise, however the Cancer Sisters come and ruin everything. This really isn't a bad scam if you could even call it one. Like I said, the only reason it fails is because of the Cancer Sisters. That being said, since they're using a tire as a boat, I'm sure it would have deflated if they hit a rock or something else that was sharp. Also F in the chat for Rolf, my man didn't get to go on the cruise. The Eds are dared to go into an abandoned house, which they do, but then they get married to the Cancer Sisters. What makes this stand out is its setting. This is the only episode that takes place in this house, which makes sense since there's not much else they could have done here. The best part has to be when Ed and Eddy are messing with everyone and they think they're getting decapitated or something.
A true friend helps a friend in need.
Johnny, Bob.
Whoops, forgot the other eye.
Johnny and Plank have a fight, so the Eds try to find him a new friend. Kind of surprised a concept like this was used so early in the series. This feels like something that would happen later on. Anyway, this kind of proves that Johnny's just crazy and that Plank isn't alive since according to him, all these other things can talk too. Then again, he does move all by himself at the end, which I guess helps the theory that he is alive. Who knows?
No little fillies, this is not midnight.
The Halloween special where the Eds try to find Spookyville, meanwhile Ed attacks everyone since he thinks they're all monsters from the movies he watched. This is a pretty good Halloween special, not fantastic or anything, but still one of the better ones. There are some problems like how this blatantly rips off Ed 11 with the whole treasure map plotline. But the thing is, while it is important to the narrative, it gets heavily overshadowed by Ed being crazy. That's the main appeal of the episode and is what keeps me so invested while watching. Yeah, the treasure map plot is there, but the whole mystery aspect about it is sort of non-existent since again, it's already been done before. This is just another example of how stupid Eddy is, since he believes anything his brother tells or gives him. The other and much bigger problem is the ending, which has the kids beat up Eddy and Double D. Eddy laughed over Ed beating up Jimmy, but that's the most he really did. Double D just went along with everything too, which again, doesn't justify the Eds getting beat up. If it was just Ed that got the crap beaten out of him, that'd be one thing, but he's the only one who doesn't, which is stupid. Anyway, it definitely doesn't ruin the episode, but it definitely holds it back from being one of the strongest. The best aspect though has to be its visuals, since this is easily one of, if not the best looking episode. Ed's imagination scenes are amazing, the colors are great, designs are cool, there's nothing else in the show that looks like this.
I'm not your boyfriend.
The second episode in the series that introduces the Cancer Sisters. Pretty sure this is going to be another controversial placement since some people hate the sisters, but the thing is they really aren't as insane or mean as other episodes they're in. Yes, it's implied that they stalk the Eds and strip them off screen, but that's really the worst they do here. They don't torment them and try to kiss them nonstop for 11 minutes straight. They try to get on their good side, but get annoyed when the Eds don't compliment them when they dress up. Anyway, I'm surprised that they were introduced so early on. I thought they didn't show up until about halfway through the first season, but I guess I was remembering wrong.
Move it, dork!
The Eds decide what everyone's careers are going to be, but then Eddy passes out and dreams of being old. This is the season 4 finale, and the concept of the Eds growing up fits so well for this, since after this is season 5, which is when the series made numerous changes. So in a way, this feels like a nice send-off for the first 100 episodes, although I wouldn't end the series here since Big Picture Show exists. The ending isn't even that great either, since while it does end with the Eds having fun, Eddy still wishes he was a kid again. That's pretty sad and dark, but not as much as the deleted scene with the Cancer Sisters. That showed that the Eds married them and even had kids too. Also, why are they like 90 years old but their kids are babies? Shouldn't they be their grandkids then? Anyway, Marie is super fat here for some reason, so I'm sure that pissed off a lot of fans. As for why the scene was deleted, it's most likely due to it being too dark or because the episode was already long enough. Wish we were able to see this in higher quality, especially since it's fully finished and all, but Cartoon Network didn't care enough to put it on the DVD box set.
Patrick sure is a heavy sleeper.
Ed sleepwalks and vores everything in everyone's houses, and I mean everything.
Yuck, germs!
What the fuck? How the hell did Ed not wake anyone up except for Double D and Jimmy? Since he went to everyone's houses, don't you think he'd wake up at least one of them? Anyway, not much to say. It's an early episode that's very simple and fun, and the ending is even good for the Eds too. This is one of the rare happy endings where the scam actually works, even though it was all the Eds' fault. That doesn't seem right, but you know what? The Eds deserve a break once in a while.
It's free real estate.
Hey, look, it's our husbands!
Just in time to play house!
Gangers! Extreme close-up!
The candy store is giving away Jawbreakers for free, so the Eds rush over there to try and get them. This is another super simple concept that's executed so well due to how great the jokes are.
Miss me!
The only nitpick is that the first 2 minutes are sort of filler, but then again the scam is alright, so I don't really mind it. After that, it's like an adrenaline rush. It's just the Eds running non-stop trying to get to the store on time.
No, really, I'm pounding you, dork.
There's also a goddamn chicken stampede for some reason, but who cares? It's funny and looks cool.
Time is not on our side, gentlemen!
Here's your brand new butt!
Oh, happy day! Thank you, dishonest store clerk. I will go and use my butt now.
Ass!
Eddy pulls off one of his cruelest scams yet, which is having everyone pay for basically nothing. Because of this, Johnny dresses up as Captain Melonhead and goes up against Eddy, who becomes Professor Scam. Besides Big Picture Show, this is the only episode Captain Melonhead is in, which I didn't realize since despite this, he's still a very memorable part of the show. Anyway, this is basically a superhero episode, which is very weird for the series, but it still manages to work well and doesn't seem out of place unlike in Pony.
Death Note? As in a notebook of death?
What's going on in here?
Breakfast! Eddy and Ed mess with Double D by writing sticky notes from his mother, which tells him to do some very strange things.
Insert broom lint into your belly button. Love, Mom?
They're jerks for messing with Double D, but it's still super fun seeing Double D do all this dumb shit. As funny as the episode is though, it's a bit hard to believe Double D doing all these things. That's sort of stupid, and another problem is how this is somewhat of a ripoff of Eeny Meeny Miny Ed. That episode had Eddy trick Ed into thinking Double D was a monster, which is different, although still similar similar enough. Anyway, there's also this great moment at the end where Ed starts crying and forces Eddy to realize that they both went too far messing with Double D. He still lies to Double D by saying Kevin was the one who wrote all those notes, but also agrees to let Double D stay at his place, which was nice.
After all.
Kevin, shine your moonbox. There.
Eddy tricks Ed into thinking Double D is a monster, then later on Double D and Ed go to Naz's party and Eddy is stuck in a bucket. Just like the last episode, this one is pretty damn funny, might even be a top 10 in terms of comedy. There's a certain charm of seeing Ed and Eddy laugh with each other during the last episode, however the dynamic between all three of them here is perfect. Eddy is a jerk and tricks Ed since he's dumb enough to believe anything, meanwhile Double D has no idea what the two of them are up to. My only problem is that while the first half is hilarious, the second half is notably weaker. It's nice to see all the kids not hate the Eds for once since they tolerate them at the party, and we also see Rolf hit Eddy with the shoe, so that's something.
It's time to
Eddy disrespects Rolf, which results in them both having a duel using fishes as weapons on top of a tree. The duel is easily one of the best scenes in the series. It's iconic, the visuals are fantastic, it's funny, it's basically perfect. The rest of it is still really good, although this one scene does heavily carry it.
I want to dress up like a clown and have sex with children and kill them.
Ed has 2 jawbreakers, however that means one of the Eds doesn't get one, so they all figure out what to do. Now the obvious solution would be to just divide the 3 jawbreakers equally, although that's easier said than done. Or maybe it's not, I don't know. I've never had a jawbreaker before, so maybe they are easy to break or cut into pieces. If I was Ed, what I do is keep one for myself, but then have Double D and Eddy decide how to split the other one. Maybe they split it halfway, or they flip a coin and decide by luck. Is there any different or better way you'd solve this problem? Maybe Ed just keeps them both and eats them. Let me know in the comment section. Anyway, the ending is super unsatisfying, although that's sort of the whole point. This is one of the rare times the Eds have jawbreakers, yet they waste an opportunity like this to eat them.
Cause it's my movie, my movie.
The Eds film a movie about Eddy in the cul-de-sac, which they plan on showing to his brother. This is a pretty unique episode, especially since it has a camera POV throughout most of it. They never explain how they plan on editing and sending the movie to his brother. They film using an old VHS camera, so I'm assuming they just have to take the tape out but then wouldn't edit it. Guess Double D would know since he's the smart one, but either way, pretty fun episode, especially when Ed fours the camera.
Man the helms! Dive!
Jimmy wants to be a star, so the Eds turn him into a morbidly obese sumo wrestler that most likely has type 5 diabetes. I think my favorite part about this is how the Eds could make him something like a singer, actor, boxer, baseball player, or anything like that. Yet instead of any of those, they decide to make him fat only because Ed is obsessed with sumo wrestlers for some reason. There's also this one part towards the end where Eddy tries to fling Jimmy all the way to Japan by using a street light, although it fails miserably.
We've got to have money.
Oh no! Look at Sarah work that coin with her big mouth! Big mouth! Big mouth!
Big mouse. Big mouse. Up your bitch. Up your bitch.
Big mouse.
There's a quarter stuck to the sidewalk and everyone tries to pick it up. Yet another super simple premise that manages to work so well due to how entertaining it is. I like how all the kids want the quarter, even though this is clearly more valuable to the Eds since they don't have any money. The ending is pretty good too. Johnny comes and reveals that the reason the quarter was stuck was due to him putting gum underneath it. That's extremely underwhelming, but considering how simple the concept is, it fits pretty well.
What's 9 plus 10?
21.
The Eds try to figure out how everything works, but somehow the world messes up and things like this happen.
Hello, Ed boys. Many doors, yeah?
This is a super weird but still very memorable episode. There's really not much like it. The only comparison I can make is that it's sort of like Every Which Way But Ed since there are fourth wall breaking moments, although they're much more extreme here. Also, it's been over a decade since I last watched it, but there was this one YouTube poop of this episode that I can't seem to find anywhere. It had Ouija in it, Eddy told Sarah to shut the fuck up, and it also had Banana Phone in it too. If any of you guys know what I'm talking about and where to find it, then please let me know.
Woohoo! PG-13! That's my mom's, Eddie. Help! He's my little Pookie Bear. Not Pookie Bear!
The Cancer Sisters kidnap Ed, so the Urban Rangers decide to rescue him. This is a great use of the Rangers, especially since they've never done something like this before. They actually go and do something useful and helpful to someone else. Wonder why they weren't like this in other episodes, like boom boom out goes the Ed. Anyway, this is another showcase that Rolf, Johnny, and Jimmy don't hate the Ed since they agree to help them out. Although it's irritating that even after all they do, Eddy leaves them to get harassed by the sisters.
Someday I'll save Christmas with a vampire.
A dickie?
The Christmas special where Eddy goes to everyone's houses so he can steal their gifts. For a 22-minute episode, it's pretty simple as well as repetitive. Again, it's mainly Eddy going to someone's house, trying to steal their gift, but fails. Rinse and repeat. That being said, it's fun seeing how each of the kids celebrate Christmas, especially Rolf, who doesn't actually celebrate it. The one annoyance though is how it ends, since Santa comes and leaves all the kids their presents. Eddy gets the bag, but instead of giving them to the kids and only taking his, he takes them all because he's an asshole. Like, I get that Eddy is a jerk and all, but did he really have to do this? He'd only be getting one present he likes, but even so, this is pretty pathetic even for him.
That's my udder you're touching.
Lies, yeah.
You've got the biggest mouth!
Fuck up, big mouse.
The Eds accidentally break Kevin's window, however, instead of confessing, Eddy says that it was caused by the Mucky Boys. As a kid, and even now, it's hard to tell whether or not they're saying Mucky, Monkey, or even Muddy Boys, but apparently it's Mucky. Anyway, it's fun seeing the Eds mess around with everyone, and they almost got away with it too. If they didn't leave the paint in the cave, and if Ed wasn't there, then maybe they actually could have tricked them. Also, there's this one part where Eddy smashes Ed's feet with a mallet, and instead of crushing them, his feet grow really big. Wonder if any kids at home tried this out, but even if they did, they probably wouldn't be around to talk about it.
Chocolate!
I'm proud of his devotion to his younger sister. Aren't you, Eddy? Eddy, please, have some decency.
Sarah gives Ed money to buy her and Jimmy Jawbreakers, but instead of doing that, he buys Jawbreakers for him, Eddy, and Double D. Yeah, this is the one and only time where all three of the Eds get to fully enjoy Jawbreaker. They did get them in the first episode, but weren't able to finish them. Ed and Double D got one and will work for Ed, but not Eddy, and the Eds have held on to them before too. But as for all the Eds eating a Jawbreaker and fully enjoying them, this is the only time in the series this has happened, which makes this episode stand out. Even on a rewatch, it's still super surprising to see the Eds get a happy moment like this, even if they do have to face the consequences during the second half. Double D and Ed get used as piñatas, and then Eddy gets, whatever the hell this thing is.
It's there.
The Eds, Johnny, Rolf, and Kevin dare each other not to do one thing they normally do every day. Ed can't eat gravy, Double D can only talk in one-syllable words, Eddy can't scream, Johnny can't be with Plank, Rolf can't eat meat, and Kevin can't say,
Nice catch it!
This is such a great idea, and I'm surprised it took the writers this long to come up with this plotline. My one nitpick is that Ed is way too obsessed with gravy here, which seems forced, especially when he even says this.
Come on, Double D. I don't say gravy all the time.
All the other dares fit perfectly. Rolf's might be a little bit out there compared to the others, but he still eats meat all the time, so I guess it makes sense. Sort of wish this was a full 22-minute episode since there's a lot you can do with this concept. They could have had all 12 characters, including Naz, Sarah, Jimmy, and the Cancer Sisters, go along with the dare too. Guess they couldn't think of something for Naz not to do since she's a very basic and flat character, but it would have been cool to see both Eddy as well as Sarah try not to yell for a full episode. Then again, I guess it's better that I'm wanting more from an episode rather than less, especially since this works really well as it is. The ending is great too. Ed wins, which is fine since Eddy was sort of a dick and pressured everyone to lose. However, he wasn't breaking any rules by doing this, so if he did end up winning, I wouldn't be mad.
Isn't an imaginary friend invisible to everyone but the kid who created it?
Did it fall off a truck? That's how my brother was born!
Ed's imaginary friend Jib comes to hang out with him, however he ends up ruining one of Eddy's scams. There's some weird unrealistic stuff in the show, like Plank debatably being alive with apparently Johnny being the only one who can hear him. There's other stuff such as the sky falling, but an imaginary friend that can interact with people being real is crazy, even for this show. Anyway, this might be Eddy's best scam ever, since it's an actual scam in real life. Most crane games are addictive and bullshit, so it makes sense why they put this in this episode. If it wasn't for Jib telling everyone that it's a scam, I'm sure they all would have wasted so much time and money trying to win. Anyway, very memorable episode, and I wish we got to see Jib come back again.
He was so ugly that everyone died.
I'm a miner! Stop!
Stop!
The Eds are stuck in Johnny's wall and each of them tell him a version of how they got there. This is a great way of showing how the Eds see each other as well as the other kids. Eddy envisions himself as the king, Double D's is probably the most accurate version with some minor tweaks, and Ed's is fucking amazing. Seriously, he has to be snorting some kind of crack, marijuana, weed, cocaine or something because he thinks of the weirdest shit ever. Anyway, the more I think about it, the more this reminds me of the Blue the Super Dude episode from Foster's, and honestly, I prefer this one over that.
He's my schmoopy doopy sweetie weetie pony pie. I want to wear his beanie.
What the heck's she talking about? Look at her face. She's probably constipated again.
The Valentine's Day special where Double D falls in love with May?
What the fuck?
Yeah, this might just be the series' most bizarre episode, and that's saying a lot.
A lot.
This is like an official fanfiction brought to life. It's so strange, it's so cringy, but also so entertaining too. I know cringe content is hit or miss for some people, so I can see if you wouldn't like it, but as for me, it's pretty good.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Valentine's Day specials aren't super uncommon, although most series tend to only do Halloween and Christmas. Guess the show was popular enough and ran for so long that they felt the need to do one. Anyway, not much else to say. It's pretty cringy, and there's also this one part where Rolf squeezes lemons into his eyes.
Reverse!
Think! 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 Think!
The Eds are tired of getting their willies touched by the Cancer Sisters, so they use reverse psychology on them, hoping that they'd scare them forever. This is another great premise. Always wondered what would happen if the Cancer Sisters were the ones who were harassed by the Eds. Would they be all for it, or would they act like this and be all shy and scared? Unfortunately, due to Eddy being a wimp, the plan fails, but if it wasn't for him, this most likely would have been the last time the Cancer Sisters talked to the Eds.
Do not eat that dirt.
What an idiot!
Anyway, this is comedy gold. It's hilarious seeing the sisters be scared of the Eds for once, since they definitely deserve this.
But I want lots and lots of people to hear me play the violin all day long.
Ed has to practice playing the violin, but he sucks at it. Eddy wants to smash it, but isn't able to, since if Sarah finds out, they'll all get their buttholes whooped. The dynamic between all three Eds is great. Eddy wants to smash the violin, but can't. Double D can't stand Ed playing it, but knows it's wrong to smash it, and Ed just plays it without even realizing how awful it sounds. This also reminds me of that one part in Clannad where Kotomi plays the violin, but sucks at it, so either Ed and Eddy ripped it off, or Clannad ripped this off. Either way, someone's definitely getting sued, and it better not be me.
If you are you, then who am I?
Oh, you're so stupid.
Do me, Double D.
We're waiting.
Very well. Let's see now. Butter toast.
The Eds dare each other to act like themselves. Ed is Eddy, Double D is Ed, and Eddy is Double D. Kind of funny how both the Dare episodes are so high on the list, but that just shows how fun it is to see these characters act out of character. It's great seeing how the Eds envision each other, especially with how one-dimensional they act too. What's also amazing is how it's not mean-spirited at all. Since they're having fun joking about each other, it's all just harmless entertainment between three best friends.
Medic!
Double D beats the living shit out of multiple kids at school, and now everyone is afraid of him. This is another great idea. Double D, the show's biggest pacifist, is now seen as this cruel, terrifying bully. What makes this work so well is how it's shot from the other kid's perspective. You never know why Double D is doing all of this, and while he clearly didn't mean for any of this, you completely understand why the kids are so terrified. Even on a rewatch, it's still so fun and thrilling watching the first half, since again, you're left wondering why Double D did this. The slapstick in the later seasons, and especially season 5, was getting old, but this is one of the best usages of it. This episode is so violent, and seeing these characters get beat up works for both its plot as well as comedy. There's also the last scene, which has the Cancer Sisters come and try to harass Double D. You'd think it'd end just like this, but no. Eddy comes and yells at them, and they actually leave for once, which was very surprising. It's a great way to end the episode, and honestly could have ended the series too, but obviously Big Picture Show is better, which I'll get into shortly. Anyway, the only nitpick is that the second half isn't as fantastic, but it's still great since we see Jimmy beat the poo-poo out of Double D. This was also another episode I remember seeing back when it aired, or at least the commercials, not the actual episode. For an entire day, for over 30 hours non-stop, they aired every single episode of the series, which was known as the best day ever. That then ended with this episode, which was said to be the series finale, which is funny since a month later the Invaded episode came out. Then a year later another episode aired, and another year after that was Big Picture Show. The craziest part about this marathon was, like I said, it was 30 hours of the series non-stop, which meant they skipped Adult Swim for one night, which was insane. Don't think they ever did this before, but either way, that was a huge deal for the time. Could you imagine if they did something like that today? Of course not, because Cartoon Network sucks now. Back when I was a kid, I remember Adult Swim airing at 11 p.m, then it switched to 10 p.m, and after that 9 p.m, which is around the time I stopped watching TV in general. Now if you turn on Cartoon Network, you'll notice that Adult Swim starts at 5 p.m. That's awful that kids don't have anything to watch on TV anymore, but then again, I'm pretty sure they all go on YouTube now because TV fucking sucks.
Hey, Apple. What? Knife? Goodness, Ed, give it some air, man!
Johnny starts annoying everyone, so the Eds get paid to get rid of him. This is the episode that really set Johnny apart from the other kids. Before this, he was seen as someone who's more along the lines of Rolf and Ed, but still a somewhat normal kid. But here he's completely crazy, and I love that the show made him this way, especially because this is one of the funniest episodes. Johnny is hilarious whenever he's on screen. Everything he does and everything he says is great.
Do it again!
This also has one of the most memorable lines in the whole show.
Why?
Anyway, I love how Johnny doesn't care that the Eds are using him to make money. You'd think he'd get mad at them for not giving him some of the cash, but no, he just wants to have fun and do whatever he wants. Also, it's really impressive that Johnny is annoying to the characters but not to the viewer. That's not easy to do, yet this pulled it off perfectly.
Are you keeping score, Johnny? The Sows have yet to win at this game. Amateurs, I tell you!
It looks like you have cancer or something, iDubbbz.
Whoa! I am turning into a werewolf, Eddie!
Ed and Eddy mess with Kevin since he's grounded, plus they also trick Double D into thinking he's going to die.
You must die!
This might be another hot take, but I love this episode. It's easily one of the series' funniest. Yes, it is mean-spirited, but it's funny to both Ed, Eddy, and most importantly to the viewer. Ed and Eddy tricking Double D into thinking he's dying is extremely messed up, but at the same time, Double D is an idiot for believing them. Now, Double D acting out of character is a genuine criticism, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Double D does lack common sense, just like in Mama's Little Ed, where he got tricked by Eddy writing him sticky notes. So while this is a bit forced and difficult to believe, it's not entirely out of character for him. Anyway, this could have been ruined due to its ending, but honestly, it's pretty much perfect. Double D gives Kevin a key to Eddy's house, so he goes in and fucks them up. It's a great moment for both Double D and Kevin, it's hilarious, and Ed and Eddy got exactly what they deserve. Ed dresses up as a monster, which causes him to believe he actually is one, so he attacks and kidnaps all the kids. This is widely considered to be one of the best episodes, and it's easy to see why. The concept is amazing, it's one of the few horror episodes, it's hilarious, and it's entirely character-driven too. Ed's costume is awesome, the sound effects he makes are great, the stakes are high, it's basically perfect. Everyone thinks Rolf's home has been invaded by aliens. This is the Invaded special, and for those who don't know, back in 2007, Cartoon Network aired 5 episodes from different series that centered on aliens for one whole week. Foster's was one of them, and if you've seen my ranking video, you'd know that episode sadly didn't hold up too well. Like at all.
My ears,
However, Ed and Eddy's episode is the complete opposite. In fact, it's just as fantastic as I remember it being. This is the show's last horror episode, and holy shit, I wish Danny Antonucci made more of them. He's great at directing these type of episodes. They may not be scary, but you fully understand why the kids are so scared during them. You're just as confused as they are, since you only see everything they see. Both the visuals and sound effects are top notch too. I know Ed and Eddy is well known for having one of the best and most unique usages of sound effects in the show, but here they go above and beyond. That dream sequence in the beginning where Sarah gets taken away by aliens and Jimmy falls to his death is still just as insane as I remember it. Not even joking, I get chills every time I watch it. It's that fucking good. There's a decent amount of other great shots too, and overall it's just an extremely well made and produced episode.
That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
Hey, Fred Day! There's big cash in showbiz, Double D, unless you're on cable.
Ed is pissed for some reason, and Double D and Eddy try to cheer him up. He's so angry that he even goes as far as to yell at Sarah.
You can't kick me out! I live here too!
So move!
Holy shit, I've been waiting ever since Sir Ed a lot for this moment, and while it's very short, it sure as hell made me smile. Anyway, this is what I consider to be the best episode in the whole series, although I'm sure everyone else will have their personal favorite too. First off, the intro is a bunch of fun, even though it doesn't have much to do with the Ed plotline.
Dick and jockey!
Once Ed comes though, it's funny up until the very end.
Ed's been holding out on us! Chicks galore, huh?
Seeing Double D and especially Eddy try to cheer Ed up is great since he's the one who usually cheers them up since he's always happy. As a mystery, this works so well too since you're left wondering what could possibly make Ed this irritated. The reveal of it being a pebble as well as Plank finding out is fucking hysterical too. Anyway, it's hilarious, it's perfect, it's got everything in it that makes the show so good, it's my all-time personal favorite episode. That being said, it's not the best thing to come from the series and I'm sure you all know what number 1 is by now, which is... Yeah, this shouldn't surprise that many of you. Big Picture Show is the best thing to ever come from the series. Before my rewatch, I was almost 100% sure this would be number 1, and while there are some amazing episodes, this is basically in its own league. This might not be one of the best animated films ever made or anything, but it's pretty much a perfect Ed and Eddy movie, and especially a perfect finale. Big Picture Show starts off unlike any episode, since the first minute has no dialogue and it's just a bunch of shots of the cul-de-sac. Shortly after this, we get glimpses of a scam that has gone horribly wrong. This is then followed by Ed packing his things since he's running away along with Double D and Eddy. This is an amazing way to start off the film. Ed usually doesn't act this terrified unless Sarah threatens to tell their mom on him. So whatever it was that the Eds did must have been by far the worst thing they've ever done, which is saying a lot.
A lot.
They've ruined Halloween, scammed everyone countless times, and have destroyed multiple of the kids' houses. What was it that the Eds did? Well, the movie never answers this, and I'm perfectly fine not knowing. Not everything needs an answer, and coming up with theories is a lot of fun. More than 15 years later, you can still wonder what exactly the Eds did that was this awful, which forced them to leave the cul-de-sac. There's some other things that don't get fully answered, such as Kevin and Naz's relationship, but most notably what's under Double D's hat. I'm sort of mixed on this, but I'm still mostly fine with how this never gets revealed. If they did show off what's underneath his hat and it ended up being something minor, disappointing, or underwhelming, then that'd piss off some fans. Not answering it outright does too, but at least we don't know the answer, so we can still come up with endless theories. Pretty sure Double D is hiding a scar or a giant bump, but then again, he was wearing it in the flashback, so who knows. Now, while I am fine not knowing, I definitely understand why fans would be annoyed at this. Danny said for years that we'd find out what's underneath his hat when the movie came out, so people have a good reason for being angry. They were going to reveal this in the film, but ultimately decided not to since it might have disappointed some fans. Again, I get it. Some things not being answered is fine, but teasing it for years and then deciding not to show it is kind of messed up.
Dearest mother and father.
The Koopalings and I have taken over the Mushroom Kingdom.
Anyway, like I was saying, the intro is fantastic, and one of those reasons is the Eds wanting to leave the cul-de-sac. Not only does this raise the stakes to the highest they've ever been, but this also expands the world too. There's only a handful of settings in the series, and season 5 did introduce a school, which was a welcome change. However, here we get multiple new locations such as a desert, ranch, gag factory, swamp, and of course amusement park. After 5 seasons and more than 100 episodes, it's super surreal seeing not just one, but multiple new settings. I would say I wish we got to see some of these get used in actual episodes, but that would also ruin how grand and big this movie feels. Anyway, back to the intro for like the 3rd time now. It's super intense and exciting, all the kids are chasing the Eds and they're cut up and badly hurt. Holy shit, how did they end up like this? Again, the movie never tells us, but that doesn't matter. You're left wondering why all of this is happening and you're expecting them to reveal something, but they don't. Instead, they chase them down for a good 5 minutes, and Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne. This scene is amazing. The Eds don't drive Eddy's brother's car because then they'd get away too easily. No, instead Ed breaks through the bottom and starts running. This scene made me clench my ass cheeks. Every second is intense, it's paced so well, and it flies by so quickly. Seeing Eddy's brother's car as well as Rome again is a nice callback, and there's some others as well that don't feel forced or put in purely for fan service. Captain Melonhead makes a return, and we see Ed turn into different variations of himself from past episodes. Anyway, after this, the Eds decide to go find Eddy's brother, and the other kids try to reach them before they get there. That's a very brief description of the plot, and despite it being this simple, it's still 90 minutes long, and that's without commercials. Pretty sure this is the longest Cartoon Network movie ever, which is funny, because again, it's also the one with the most simple and basic premise. Again, there's other things that happen throughout it, but it's easy to sum up the film in just one sentence. However, because of how simple its premise is, it makes the second act not as memorable as the intro, and especially conclusion. That's not to say the rest of the film isn't good. In fact, it's far from it. Every single scene with the Eds is great, and most of the other ones that don't include them are too. Now I say most of them because there's the Kevin and Naz ones, which while good, are easily the film's weakest. Just like the other kids, Kevin and Naz go searching for the Eds by themselves. However, while they are, Naz tries to get down and dirty with Kevin, even though he seems to goon only for his bike, which is pretty dumb, forced, and annoying too. If this was a one-time joke, that'd be one thing, but this happens like 3 times throughout the film, and it gets old pretty quick. Also, more importantly, why is Naz the one suddenly gooning over Kevin? Shouldn't this be the other way around? Kevin, along with most of the others, had a crush on her. She never had a crush on any of them, although all of a sudden, now she loves Kevin. This wouldn't be such a problem, but again, Kevin acting this dumb and out of character is distracting. I wouldn't be opposed to the two of them being in a relationship, which I don't think they are. The film doesn't make it very clear. The film also never mentions when it takes place, which is why I'm sort of fine with this being left up to interpretation. Maybe this takes place a full year after season 5, so by then Naz might have fallen for Kevin, which I could believe. Anyway, another character who acts notably different is Sarah, since she isn't as loud, angry, and especially annoying here. She still wants to see the kids beat up Ed, which is mean, but again, she's not yelling and being obnoxious every second she's on screen. She also doesn't beat anyone up. In fact, for once, she's the one who gets her ass handed to her since the Cancer Sisters fuck her up. Hell yeah, I've been waiting forever to see this, and let me tell you, this sure was worth the wait. Because she can't stop the Cancer Sisters with brute strength, she resorts to tricking them and running away, which was very refreshing. Wish we saw her act like this more during the show instead of always yelling and beating people up. Guess that's something Jimmy would do, but even so, I wouldn't complain, especially since they're friends and all. Maybe she was written like this since enough people bitched and moaned about how much she sucked, but either way, I'm not complaining. Besides the last 2 episodes, this is the only time the series was in widescreen, and it looks great. The series switched to digital starting with season 5, which for the most part I liked, but it looks so damn good here, especially in terms of animation. This is a movie, so of course it's going to have a bigger budget and more time, but even so, this is easily the best the series has looked. There's also some great emotional scenes, like when Double D says he doesn't want to be friends with Eddy anymore, which forces him to admit that the scam was all his fault. We rarely see Eddy own up to his mistakes and act like this, so this is yet another surprise and welcome addition. There's a scene where Double D is crying his eyes out while writing to his parents since he believes he's never going to see them again. But of course, the one which everyone remembers is the final scene, which is nearly perfect. After 5 seasons, more than 100 episodes in 10 years, we finally get to see Eddy's brother, who's been mentioned plenty of times beforehand. This also marks the first time an adult has been fully shown on screen and talks too. Just like the amount of new locations, this was super surreal to see, since throughout the whole show, there's only been 12 characters as well as Plank. So to finally see a new character, or at least one that's never been shown before, was mind-blowing. Anyway, which just as crazy as the reveal of Eddy's brother being an absolute dick. For his entire life, Eddy has been abused by him, which makes you rethink your opinion of him. This explains why Eddy turned out the way he did. He acted like a jerk, tried to scam everyone, and take their money too. These are things he learned from his brother, who's been his one and only role model for his whole life. He did want to make friends, but deep down he thought he'd be respected more if he acted like his older brother, which is why he never got along with the other kids. After seeing Eddy get tormented, all the kids take his side and become friends with him since they realize how badly his brother has treated him. While this is a great moment and an amazing way to end the series, it's not executed perfectly. It's jarring seeing all the kids go from wanting to kill the Eds to doing a full 180 within the span of like 2 minutes. It's not even for the movie either. Most of them have disliked them throughout the entire show, although Rolf and Az don't outright hate them like Kevin does. So again, to see them quickly change their entire minds on them is a bit jarring. All they really needed was a few more minutes of Eddy getting beat up and more shots of the kids realizing that Eddy had a reason for acting like a jerk. But this is more of a nitpick since this moment is still one of the series' strongest. Anyway, Eddy's brother gets hit in the head, Eddy confesses that he was wrong for lying about his brother this entire time, and then the kids befriend the Eds.
We did it, Double D! Everyone loves us! We're finally in, baby!
And it only took 130 episodes, 4 specials, and a movie, Eddy.
This ending is fantastic. After all this time, the Eds finally managed to get on their good side, became friends with them, and even got Jawbreakers too. We never see them eat the Jawbreakers with everyone else, which is a bit disappointing. There could have been a scene in the credits where they're all hanging out at Kevin's and eating them, but this is another nitpick. The only real criticism is how everyone beats up Johnny for mistakenly fighting the Eds. He had no idea everyone was friends with them now and was only doing what he thought was right. He's even revealed to be the villain now in the after credits.
There's no time left? It's the end of the movie? What movie?
This I'm actually mixed on. It's pretty funny, don't get me wrong, but is this really a great message and way to end the show? Yeah, Johnny has always been weird and is the least liked among the kids besides the Eds, but couldn't all 9 of them just get along with each other? Does there always need to be someone at the very bottom for all the kids to shit on? This isn't a huge problem and I don't hate it, but it's just sort of weird to have Johnny turn super crazy like this, even though, he is crazy. This is really the only way the series could have ended, and realistically, you can't get much better than this. There are alternate endings, such as one where Eddie's brother was going to get arrested, but the writers didn't want other adults on screen, so they scrapped it. There's one where Eddie realizes that Ed and Double D were his real brothers all along, which is actually a pretty nice ending. This would have been fine, as long as they still befriend the kids, but as it is, the ending is still awesome. Sure, there are some nitpicks, like Kevin gooning over his bike and the Cancer Sisters being able to somehow find the Eds, which is never explained. The Gag Factory also has power, even though it's been abandoned for years, so wouldn't it run out of electricity? But either way, none of these really hold the film back at all. One thing that I never knew until making this video was that Danny Antonucci purposely canceled season 6 in order to make this. He thought making a full season along with a feature-length film would be too much for AKA cartoon, and I'm 100% fine with this. Season 5 was mixed, still overall decent, but you could tell the series dropped in quality. However, this was outright fantastic, easily one of the best Cartoon Network movies as well as one of the best cartoon finales ever.
Absorb the clue, Eddie. I want to be a tree.
Well, that was all the episodes, but if you've seen my other ranking videos, then you know that this isn't where the video ends. That's because, just for shits and giggles, I did the math and decided to rank all the seasons too, so let's see which is the best and which is the worst.
Number 5.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, season 5 is the weakest season, and that's something nearly every fan can agree on. There were some major changes from the last seasons, one of them being the switch to digital animation. Some people don't like this change, and I don't really see why. Sure, it's one thing to prefer cell and hand-drawn animation, but the series doesn't look bad at all. Yes, there is a certain charm to the previous seasons, but again, this looks perfectly fine. In fact, it looks pretty good.
Hey, that's pretty good.
The one major aspect they kept was the boiling lines, which are those wavy lines that move even though the characters themselves don't. If they got rid of this one small detail, then I'd 100% agree that season 5 looks worse. I know it's small and all, but this adds so much personality and distinction to the series. Anyway, the other huge change is that the kids now attend school since summer is over, which some people also don't seem to like. Now I get it, there's a certain charm of having the series only take place at this one specific time and in the same handful of areas, but by season 4, the series was starting to get a bit stale and it felt like something needed to change. The show wasn't going downhill or anything, but it was getting old seeing the same locations over and over again. It was either this or adding in a brand new character, and usually if that happens, you know the show is going down the shitter. Anyway, I am perfectly fine with the switch to digital animation as well as the kids going to school. That being said, what sets the season apart so much aren't these two aspects, it's the writing. Season 5 somehow has even more slapstick, which does get old, although there are exceptions. Some of the best slapstick is used in episodes like The Eds Are Coming and A Fistful of Ed, which are both fantastic episodes. But in a regular episode, it does get repetitive and tiresome, although usually isn't anything too bad. Also, yes, I am counting the season 6 episodes as well as all 3 holiday specials as season 5. Jingle Jingle Jangle did come out right after season 4, but it was digitally animated, which is why I consider it to be season 5. If it wasn't for the specials, the season would be considerably lower too, making it by far the worst season. That being said, while this season is the weakest, it's still decent overall, and it's definitely worth watching or rewatching. Although I do recommend skipping all the bad ones, especially Smile for the Ed. That one fucking sucks.
Number 4.
There's not a whole lot to say about season 3. It's just another season of Ed, Ed, and Eddy. There's some classic episodes like Dueling Eds, Once Upon an Ed, and The Day the Ed Stood Still. The only misses are X Marks the Ed and If It Smells Like an Ed. I know this is labeled as a season 4 episode on certain sites, but it's season 3 on the DVD, so that's what I'm going by. Anyway, like I already said before, I think this gets shit on a bit too much, but either way, this and the other episode doesn't hold the season back from being good.
Number 3.
Season 1 is surprisingly better than season 3, but only by one singular nipple hair. The first season is sort of mixed by fans. It's either seen as really good or just alright. Many of the episodes are very simple, even for a series as basic as this. Because of this, none of them really stand out as being all that amazing, although there's a lot of good ones. There's really only one miss, which is Sir Ed-a-Lot, but even then, at worst, it's just mediocre. What sets this apart from the other seasons is the slapstick or lack thereof. Yes, there is slapstick here, but it's not as much as the others, especially season 5. Seriously, go watch one of these episodes and then go watch one from season 5. It's like night and day. okay. Because of the lower amount of slapstick, the series doesn't have as much energy as the other seasons. This could be seen as a good thing, and I do appreciate how slice of life and down to earth it is. But at the same time, when I think of Ed and Eddy, I think of how energetic it can be at times. That's not all the show has to offer, obviously, but it's a staple that's surprisingly seen a lot less in its first season.
Number 2.
There's not a lot to say about season 4 either. It's another good season. There's some standout episodes like A Case of Ed, A Twist of Ed, and my personal favorite, Little Ed Blue. The only big miss was Your Ed Here, which is awful, but besides that, most of the season is good.
Number 1.
Season 2 is apparently the best season, and that's not too surprising. Besides To Start With Ed, which is just another mediocre episode, there's not much to dislike. Just like season 1, it's pretty consistent, although its episodes are more entertaining. The scams got better, jokes were funnier, and the writers started to figure out how they wanted to write the show. Seasons 2, 3, and 4 have this great balance and use of slapstick that seasons 1 and 5 don't. Season 5 has too much, season 1 has too little, but the middle seasons have just enough. Anyway, not much else to say. It's good, I guess it's the best, although there's not that big of a gap between the first 4 seasons. Oh my goodness gracious, I'm finally done. I ranked every single episode, special, the movie, and even all the seasons. Like always, it was a lot of fun going back and rewatching a show I grew up watching. Going into these rankings, I expect to enjoy these shows less now, mainly because I have a lot of nostalgia for them. With the Eds, I was a bit disappointed since there weren't that many standout episodes. There's some bad episodes as well as a notable amount of just okay ones. But even then, there's only 2 episodes that I'd say are outright offensive, and somehow Big Picture Show was surprisingly better than I remember it being. Ed and Eddy has its highs and lows. There's a lot of good episodes, and thankfully it's still a solid series to this day.
As long as we sidestep Sarah and keep our big mouths shut. Big mouths, big mouths, big mouths.
Anyway, this video took an insane amount of time to write, record, and edit. So if you want to support and help me continue making videos, then you can leave a like, comment, share, or subscribe. You can also join the Discord server, support me on Patreon, or even become a channel member here on YouTube starting at only 99 cents.
But shit, it was...
Anyway, for those who don't know, I made a poll for my last 3 rankings where I let you guys decide which show I should rank and review next. You guys voted and chose the Ed, so I'll let you guys do it yet again. Shortly after this video comes out, I'll make a new poll which will include 4 shows and you can all vote for what will be next. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Good night, every pony.